This is the biggest fishing port in France. It is on the English Channel as well. The tunnel links it with the United Kingdom. 122 miles online to Boulogne-sur-Mer today as the riders now head to this finishing line. Looks flat enough here, doesn't it? Well, I can tell you it climbs all the way to the finish line today. As we look out across the canals of the north of France here, once again the riders coming basically in a westerly direction to arrive in Boulogne. Well, as we look out across the fields here today, Paul, the weather is overcast and there's every chance the wind will blow the rain in during the race.
Well, it very often does come in off the English Channel, very changeable in this part of the world. An interesting profile when we get down towards the end, Phil, because this is what we've done so far after 50 miles of racing, pretty much flat. But we're going into an area known as Le Boulonnais, which is the area around Boulogne in the area where we're finishing here. But the organisation have found a very tricky run in towards the finish with 3 climbs in the last 10 miles, and I have to say 4 climbs in the last 20 miles. It's going to be very difficult, I think, for anybody to control the front end of the main field on the run into Boulogne-sur-Mer.
So I think we can expect to see the riders with ambitions riding near the front, staying safe again. As we're looking at the back of the peloton, it's been a pretty routine day so far. Pace has been good, 27.5 miles an hour covered in the opening mile. They've still got a fair way to go, of course, but the pace has been on. And there is a breakaway up front with 5 riders in the lead. We just saw Johnny Hoogland there sitting at the back of the bunch. Well, he doesn't need reminding about this, does he? That's him going straight into the barbed wire fence. I think that's probably one of the worst accidents I've seen in the Tour.
Well, one of the most dramatic for sure. But the amazing thing is the 2 guys who went down, he had about 120 stitches in his legs. He finished the stage and went on to finish the Tour de France, which I think is absolutely remarkable.
And he had to go up on the podium when he got to the finish and pull on the leader's jersey in the King of the Mountains. He was in tears with pain, and in fact he's in the Tour, of course. We've just seen him this year, but he's also still in some pain from the healing scars which are all over the backs of his legs and his back.
Yeah, well, the Tour de France, no stranger to Boulogne-sur-Mer. It's the 4th visit here this year, Phil, and first came in 1949. But in the recent times, in 1994, it was won by the sprinter Jean-Paul van Poppel. And last time we came here, it was won by the great sprinter Erik Zabel from Germany. So these are the 5 men leading group, and they got away after 5 kilometres. Attack started immediately as the race came out of the gun. And finally, at 5 kilometres, these 5 men, André Grivko, Michael Mercure, Sebastian Minard, Ruben Perez of Euskaltel-Euskadi, and Giovanni Bernardo established their advantage. After 15 kilometres, it reached its maximum at 5 minutes and 40 seconds. But then all of a sudden, Radio Shack Nissan came to the front and said, enough is enough.
Well, these are the 5 leaders at the moment, racing on extremely good wide roads here as they make their way steadily into the hills around Boulogne. Now, we saw the crash just then last year to Johnny Hoogland, but let's now go to Craig Hummer because he met somebody who was hit yesterday in the race by a car, and here he is at the start this morning talking to him.
Here at the start line of stage 3, I was just able to visit with Astana's Yanni Brajkovic. It was his roommate, Borad Bozic, that was hit yesterday after stopping to take a nature break. He'd been riding for about 20 to 30 seconds when he was squarely hit from behind and sent to the ground. Yanni says his roommate is going to be okay, a little shaken up, but shades of stage 9 from last year's Tour when Johnny Hoogland and Juan Antonio Flecha went onto the sidelines.
Well, thanks, Craig. Yes, I saw 1 or 2 of the riders tweeting today saying this is a note to all the spectators. Please don't stand in the road taking photographs of us because you get hurt and we get hurt. And I think that's about the best advice we can say. Well, this is the peloton. There is the winner of yesterday's stage in that white jersey, just peeping in and out behind his Sky teammates. Mark Cavendish delivered one of the finest sprints of his life yesterday. Why? Because Paulie had to do it without his team.
We had to learn a different way of sprinting, but the fact is, don't ever forget Mark Cavendish has been a world champion on the track. He knows how to sprint without a lead-out train, and he used all of that knowledge yesterday to weave his way through the pack and go from wheel to wheel until he finally got the wheel that he wanted, and that was the wheel of André Greipel. He came out of that slipstream like a Formula One racing car.
Well, under the control of Fabian Cancellara's Radio Shack team, all of those riders on the front, 7 of them setting the pace, and they've been doing a good job of it, which indicates to me that Cancellara wants to keep his yellow jersey, but I'm wondering, Paul, as they make this rather tricky turn here. Oh my goodness me, as they've gone round there, confusion reigns, and Astana rider on the floor at the top of the picture. Lampreia down.
Just having a quick look, it looked like it might have been 181, which would be Yanni Brakovic, who's gone down there.
Well, the rider we were just in fact talking about also down there is Yuri Trofimov, a Russian rider on the Katusha team. Well, there they've swerved away from it. The Katusha rider is Trofimov.
Well, in fact, it's Alexander Vinokourov on the left-hand side. He crashed out of the Tour de France last year. That's 189 Alexander Vinokourov. He's the rider on the left-hand side.
And Robert Kieslowski is the rider on the right here, just checking out. Just have another look at this.
I think 181 was there as well, Phil, Yanni Brakovic. I could feel that crash happening.
Well, it was the Lampreia rider who went first, touch of wheels, and then the others, luckily, almost at a standstill. So hopefully it's just been a loss of ego there, because they seem to be getting themselves organised for it. You're right, it's also Boris Bosic, the rider, 182 there in the blue jersey as champion of his country, and 181 Brakovic, the two riders who were roommates last night. And the one on the right here was speaking with Craig Hummer this morning, explaining the accident to Bosic, and they're both down this time, seconds after we showed you that interview. Well, a little bit of torn lycra there, but hopefully they'll quickly get back in.
I could feel that crash happening as everyone was trying to squeeze their way around that little piece of traffic furniture there on the road. Now these guys will have to chase fairly hard to get themselves back into the main field. But 2 crashes in 2 days for the man from Astana is not going to make his body feel all that good, Borut Bodzik. He went down, as we said, very nastily yesterday. But again, any corner in the Tour de France is dangerous. You never know what's going to be around it. These guys are going around 2,500 miles of France. There's no dress rehearsal. They might go and look at a few sections in the mountains, but these roads, they're very, very much unknown.
No, that's right. They take them as read as and when they find them. They're racing across the part of France now known as the Nord Pas de Calais as they race towards Boulogne. And it gets very undulating towards the finish today. In the last 10 miles of racing day, we have 4 climbs, which includes the finishing climb in Boulogne itself. It's quite a tough one. Here we go, bunny hopping again as we leave that traffic circle behind us. We'll take a break, rejoin us. We're back with the Tour de France as the riders now, this is the Saint-Pierre Collegiate Church here, as the riders are about to pass through. They're still trying to get back on, those riders who fell. It shouldn't be a problem. This is what's happened. We've got one rider back at the team car here. Now, Yanis Brakovic, who appears to be the worst injured, he's got cuts on his shoulder and his arm. He's being stitched up a little bit here by the doctor, but he crashed out of the Tour de France on the 5th stage last year, Paul, with a broken collarbone. At least it's nothing as bad as that today.
Well, the amazing thing is that 4 riders from Astana went down at the same time. They were all riding very close together. It's one of those nasty little corners. You go around it, and then all of a sudden, as you're halfway around the corner, right in the middle of the road, there's a traffic island, and there's nothing you can do to move because there are so many riders going around at that time. And going down hard with him was his own teammate, Alexander Vinokourov.
Well, the riders passing beneath the Saint-Pierre Collegiate Church, which, by the way, took 100 years to build during the period 1492. And they're making the way now onwards. They'll get back in the bunch okay. We've got those 5 leaders who have been away since the 3rd mile today, getting together very early on. They got off to a quick start, covering 27.5 miles in the first hour of their escape and building a lead of 5.5 minutes. But I think that's when alarm bells started ringing, because the peloton have pegged them now and in and around 4 minutes. They're holding them till we get to those hills,
And nearly all of the work has been done by Radio Shack Nissan. That little small building just on the side there, by the way, is known as the Bailiwick. It's built in 1600 and it's on the corner of the Grand Place. Its surface area is only 125 square meters, but it is really beautifully decorated in the Renaissance style.
Here we are across the cobble street past the Bailiwick and the Astana boys, 3 of them on the same team. The rider in blue is the champion of Slovenia, Boric, as also on Astana. They're back in the pack and they'll now be able to sort themselves out. So an embarrassing shunt, but happily only a little loss of lycra and a shaving of skin for that one.
On the right-hand side, briefly, the rider in the orange jersey of Rabobank, that was Luis Leon Sanchez. News coming from the team that he's actually improving. He had a lot of pain in his wrist yesterday, but he managed to drag himself through that course and feels that he will improve as the race continues. Lots of crashes always happen in the first week of the Tour de France. Everybody's nervous, everyone's taking risks, and again, I would expect to see a rip-roaring finish up here towards the finishing line in Boulogne-sur-Mer, but lots of attacks will be in store, I would say, Phil, in the last hour of the race, because this is an ideal terrain for men who want to go out on the attack.
And again, very, very nervous. Well, right on the front there in that polka dot jersey, the leader of the King of the Mountains, day 3 on the open road of the Tour de France, and Michael Morcu has been in the lead throughout on every stage so far in a breakaway. Now we're referring to him from now on as Michael Morcu, because the Danish televisions informed us they don't pronounce the V on his name, which is Murkoff. So from now on, it's Morcu.
Well, in fact, their explanation was, in fact, he's Danish and he's not Russian, so that's why they came up with that explanation. Anyway, he's a track rider, Phil, and that may be the reason why he's been able to have that speed and ability to search out this breakaway at the start of every stage. And in fact, after this, he's going straight across to London. He's not actually riding the road race at the Olympic Games. He's going to be riding with the Danish Pursuit Squad.
Well, he's already got a silver medal 4 years ago. I'm surprised at that. I thought he was now concentrating all his effort on the road. He rode the Giro d'Italia last year alongside Alberto Contador, where he was a strong ally. So he's now in the breakaway, trying to build a little lead. If he can stay away to the mountains today, he could probably get himself 7 or 8 points, which could keep him in the lead for a few days.
Well, it wouldn't be, you know, he's a real competitor. I think the first 2 sprints out on the open road, on the stage 1 and 2, he did that to blow out the cobwebs, because he's not been in competition a lot so far this season. So maybe he may well miss out on this one and save himself for the next real flat stages. There is Peter Sagan in that green jersey. You can see him. He's in a nice position there in about 15th place, while the leading group of 5, they're just 1 kilometre to go. They should reach that finishing line in around about 1 minute and 10 seconds.
And these are the 5 leaders. Well, Cancellara is in there as well, back in that group. So we're approaching the sprint then in Senlec, and it's 800 metres to go. I think they'll just continue to work together. Maybe they won't even attack each other here. I think you're right about Morcu. He's waiting for the hills now, and he needs the help of these 4 guys to get him there and at least knock off a couple of the hills, because only the leader in the 4th category climb gets any points in the competition.
Well, once he's gone over the top, he's only got about 13 kilometres. Once we've gone through the sprint point, there's only 13 kilometres to the first climb of the day, and he'll be seriously interested in getting an extra point if he can, because this leader's jersey is giving him an awful lot of publicity to his team.
300 metres to the sprint. Morcu goes through. Ruben Perez in the orange goes following him through. Grifko in the light blue, the champion of his country, the Ukraine, in the time trial and the road race. There is the banner. Oh, this is going to be a great sprint, isn't it, when we approach this with the main field, for those who really want the points, like Peter Sagan, maybe Mark Cavendish, Matthew Goss and Andre Greipel. And they're not racing it through. They've just gone as who is on the front gets the prize. So it is the 82R rider, Sébastien Minard, followed by Bernardo in 2nd place.
Well, for these riders, they've got to keep themselves together as a unit. They know that if they want to survive, they have to work in an alliance, an entente cordiale, if you like, to make sure they can work as a unit, keep that advantage as much as possible. It's Sébastien Minard gets himself for 1st place, 2nd place Giovanni Bernardo, and 3rd place for Michael Morcu. But behind, we will see a more serious sprint, Phil, for just 6th place.
We most certainly will, because every point counts. The man that wants to win the green jersey competition. 4 previous winners of that competition are in this race, including last year's defending green jersey, Mark Cavendish. And we're interested to see if Mark is interested in the green jersey this year, whether he wants to have a slightly easier Tour de France because of the upcoming Olympic Games. But I think when he's in with a chance of winning the points, my feeling is he's going to put them in the bank just in case. Well, they've got Stuart O'Grady on the front now, riding for the Orica Green Edge, which means they're looking to lead out Matthew Goss, their man. But Mark Cavendish has also moved up in the line. The green jersey of Peter Sagan coming up alongside Mark Cavendish as well, and could well be coming up on the back wheel of Matthew Goss, just peeping into our picture. So the big names are moving up. That's Bernard Eiser now, looking where Mark Cavendish is.
Look at all the faces of these riders. The orange jersey there and Rabobank, that is Mark Renshaw. He's pretty much on his own, but this is a serious lead out by Orica Green Edge. It's led out initially at 1 kilometre to go there by Stuart O'Grady. He will ride as fast as he can. Less
800 metres to go now, and Orica Green Edge are the team who are all riding for Matthew Goss. They put all, there's a rush on the left of the side as well on the road there, as they try to bring through their riders on Team BMC, with TJ Van Garderen in the white jersey moving up. But this is Stuart O'Grady. now in his 16th Tour de France. He's the first lead-out man. They are hoping the last man of that line will be their man Matthew Goss, but guess who's on the back wheel of Gossi? And that is Mark Cavendish, who's locked in, and Peter Sagan is locked in on the back wheel of Cavendish. He knows it as the rush suddenly comes on the left of the road here, as it's Greipel starting to be led out to the line now. Well, Sagan's recognised it as he tries to take him on. Gossi tries to go to the middle, got a bit sandwiched out there, but as they race up the line, Cavendish, he's got open space, and Mark Cavendish has got time to look and say, what's your problem? He gets it and has no problem at all in taking that. It was Kenny Van Hummel who was behind him, and Mark didn't seem to like the way he was sprinting.
I think he had a few words to say about the way a few riders there were sprinting as he came up to the line. Looking back there, he is the fastest man in the world, Phil. There is absolutely no doubt about that at all. He got boxed in. I thought he was in the wrong position. Then all of a sudden, the door opened in front of him, and just watching the way he looks at this man here to say, what are you doing?
Well, he really is the fastest man, and he's even dictating who's going to win when he's actually... Oh, that was why he was sort of squashed out of it. And really, it was Peter Sagan who was diving for the wheel of Kenny Van Hummel there. And he caused a second kick from Mark Cavendish, who then went over the top of Sagan. He wasn't impressed with that man sprinting, and he was certainly very unimpressed with Kenny Van Hummel sprinting as well.
A lot of these guys, Phil, in the opening days of the Tour de France, they take all kinds of incredible risks. A sprinter almost checks out his brain at 200 metres ago. Mark Renshaw also went past Kenny Van Hummel there and had a couple of words to say to him too.
Well, he's a big winner, Kenny Van Hummel, even so. So, Cavendish going on a little bit there with Kenny Van Hummel. Well, they're going to spend a lot of time together over the next 3 weeks, and so they want to make sure that they sprint straight.
I'll tell you what, Phil, that, you know, a lot of guys, because they're not quite at the same level, they will take risk and they create danger, and you don't need to have danger in a sprint like that when you're charging up to a line at 40 miles an hour.
No, well, there won't be a sprint quite as close as that, I don't think, today when we get to the finish, because it's quite uphill.
About a 20-kilometre ride until he gets to the next climb of the day, the Côte de Mont-Violet, and that is a third category climb, and there'll be 2 points available for the first rider to cross over that one, and 1 point for the second place rider. He will try and amass as many points as he can, because actually, Phil, if he gets a big number of points today, he could keep that lead in the King of the Mountains competition for 3 or 4 days, because over the next couple of days we really are going through the flatlands of northern France.
Well, they're picking up a slight tailwind at the moment, judging by the way they are now moving. Now we've got, I saw a Radio Shack rider with his hand up just this moment ago, and this also has happened. The riders here seem to be saying, come on, let's all work together now. This is Jaroslav Popovic, who's been on the front almost since the start today. On the far left of our picture, Stuart O'Grady in the white. He's not interested in getting involved in any argy-bargy, so anyway, they're back on it. But there are a couple of riders now starting to work at the front, and Cancellara in his bright yellow jersey as leader has moved up now into 5th place. This is now the dangerous section of the race. The speed will be up, the descents are twisting, they're narrow. We're constantly going up small sharp climbs. We're heading now to the Côte de Mont-Violet, which will come only 21 miles from the finishing line today. That's 33 kilometres if you want to work in kilometres, as we're now seeing the serious part of the tour is now beginning, that's for sure now. And bringing up Team Sky on the right as well. Ooh, and there was a rider that almost hit the side of one of the Team Sky riders. I thought for a moment we were about to see tangled metal going all over the place. Take a look at the bushes behind. The wind is beginning to blow, as it does in this region. And if ever they break out of the shadow of these little fells they're in at the moment, they will catch the full blast off the channel, the English Channel that is. Sagan still dead centre at the moment too. Everybody now getting nervous. Here we go again. Now don't forget, tomorrow morning the Tour de France continues on the NBC Sports Network at 8 Eastern. This looks like it's right ahead. It's all darting back through. Here's poor old Bryce Fairview still dodging amongst the cars. But here is the leader of the Garmin Sharp team, the winner, the first Canadian ever to win the Giro d'Italia, which he did last month. And he's now regaining back because he's in amongst the cars here. So I don't know what happened. He's caught off the back of the field. And judging by the speed on this descent and the fragmented convoy behind, it's going to hurt him to get back at the moment. This is an urgent moment. There's no teammates come back at all to help him, which is not usual at this stage of the race. just gone past the teammate there, which is not a teammate, rather. It's Andrei Kashakin of the Astana team. There's a problem for an Euskaltel Euskadi boy with a flat tyre on the front. Very unlucky to puncture at this moment because they're on a descent and the peloton is well strung out, and so are the following convoy of cars. I'm sure he'll get back when the concertina closes up, but energy he didn't really want to waste today, I would think, for rider Heyerdahl. So we'll take another break as the peloton passes the school and the polka dot jersey. Hi guys. At least rider Heyerdahl has now rejoined the back of that field, and so too has Alexander Vinokurov. So they're now facing the situation where they can now get on with racing towards the finish. Rider Heyerdahl had a bit of a problem. He was on the side of the road. One of his teammates, Robbie Hunter, is with him at the time, and they're both on the right of the road. A little bit of a fall there, I think, for Heyerdahl, and a problem too for Vinokurov. But now back up to the front of the race here. They're driving on. Put two of Sagan's teammates to drive the pace. So they're anxious now to start making an impression on that breakaway. 4 minutes 11 seconds. 54 kilometers to go, about 35 miles maximum to the finish, and it is a difficult road now. This is going to lead, as it always does, Paul, to a very nervous end to the Tour de France again today.
Yeah, but this is much more difficult to control, Phil, as they charge into town here, because you're going up and down all of the time, and it's very, very difficult for any of the teams to actually control the race, and you will see a lot of attacks going on.
Well, the Chateau of Parentis here was built in 1785 by Gaspard de Gédéon Levasseur. Interesting name, Levasseur, because we're in the home area of Cedric Vasseur, a yellow jersey wearer of the Tour de France in Chartres, where we go at the end of this race.
Yeah, but for the moment you can see the nervousness, the speed in this main field. It's almost as if we're in the last 20 kilometres. That's Chris Horner over on the right-hand side, moving himself to the front end of the line of riders here, coming up to have a quick chat with Jaroslav Popovic. Look at the big smart. These boys, yes, it is rather hard, it is rather fast, almost certainly. We're running along at a speed here now starting to approach 30 miles an hour.
It's been quite a nippy pace today because the wind is constantly changing direction. At the moment the riders are profiting, I think, from a little bit of a tailwind here. The big broad frame of a man, I think it should be a swimmer, shouldn't he, Andrei Grifko, with shoulders like that. The double champion of the Ukraine, as it comes up to just on 3.5 hours in front now. Anxious faces here of the leaders. They know now they want to stay away for as long as they can. It's not impossible today for a breakaway to succeed. The terrain is absolutely perfect. It's not what the riders at the back want, though, particularly the yellow jersey of Fabian Cancellara. He only has to catch these riders and finish with them to keep that leader's yellow jersey. Welcome back. You're looking at live pictures. This has happened about 40 seconds ago. There has been a big crash towards the middle and back of the peloton. Riders restarting here as they get away, and one or two riders left on the road, and this is not good for rider 109, because that is one of the strong men on Sky Cycling, which is Konstantin Sivtsov. He's a very valuable member of that squad. Looks as though he's been touched a little bit there. The peloton were really beginning to race quickly, so I think we can try and show you that again. This is Vinokurov rejoining the back of the peloton, and just in time to see the crash in front of him. And it was really towards the back of the pack here. Most of the riders managing to just stop. Robbie Hunter right in our camera to the left there in his South African champion's jersey, and taking the quick way round there is Nicolas Ede in 84 in the red. He was in the breakaway yesterday. See if we can see anything more from this angle. The front was absolutely flying at this moment. As we try to appear through the helicopter there, not very easy. Jens Voigt adjusting his racing jersey at the second rider in the line, and then all of a sudden the cameras cut to the back and these riders were on the floor. These are the remnants getting away from the back. A massive blockage on the road here. The rider lying on the road there is Sivtsov from the Sky Cycling team. There was a couple of riders from Garmin Sharp also delayed, but they seem to have moved off. Most of it's just sorting out the tangled metal and getting back on the way. Ertazan also down there as well, I believe, who's in the King of the Mountains competition at the moment. Sagan's got a flat tyre as well, which may have been caused by the crash or may not have been. He is broken away. I think the rider from Garmin Sharp was indeed Tyler Farrer, who was left on the road. They had a teammate with him, and I believe he's on his bike again now. But Sagan All the confusion happening in a split second. He's just changed the wheel now to get back into the race. So he may have damaged the wheel and it had to be changed there. He's taken his chance. Now he's got to get back in the action. Just looking down there, just look to the top end to the right there. There we are, number 63, and that is Farah on the ground. And he's got his teammate, Johan van Summeren, trying to move his bike so he can get up, and he can. This is Sivtsov, and this is rather sad for Team Sky. This is something they don't want to see, losing one of their strong men. Let's hope they can get him back on his bike. Well, Sivtsov left on the road there, Paul. Let's hope the Sky can get him back. He's a valuable member of the Sky cycling team. Tyler Farrow is down there for Garmin Sharp. And this poor man, I think he might have damaged his wheel in the shunt, but he's had a wheel change for Peter Sagan. And he's left out on his own just now.
Well, I don't think it'll be very long before his squad sends a couple of riders back to help him. He, I think, just had a mechanical because of that accident. What can happen sometimes is when people are braking in front, somebody doesn't brake hard enough behind and they come out and they rip a couple of spokes out of your back wheel, and that may be what happened to Peter Sagan. But as you can notice now, it's not his team Liquigas at the front who are doing the pacemaking. It's now Movistar, and that was Jose Ivan Gutierrez. He's in the convoy of cars, Peter Sagan, so he shouldn't really have too much of a problem getting back into the peloton.
He's not panicking, he's just waiting for his moment to go around the vehicle one at a time and get back up into the peloton. He keeps looking over his shoulder, so I think he might have a few riders behind him, and he's waiting to see what their progress is. There are a lot of riders weren't on the floor, but they were stopped on the road, and so there's quite a big bunch of riders coming back to this race. Dangerous moments, but the Movistar riders now, as you say, Gutierrez getting to the front. That tells me that Alejandro Valverde wants to win the day's race.
No, he certainly does. He's very keen to get himself the victory. It's an ideal victory finishing line for him if he can.
With Team Sky. Of course, coming up on Tour de France Primetime, we will be talking about the strategy for Team Radio Shack Nissan, and we will have, as always, Ask Bob Key presented by Head Sweat. So let's send it back to Phil Liggett, Paul Sherwood.
Thank you very much indeed, guys. Yes, I agree with your comments on Sivtsov. Big loss for Team Sky. He was 16th in his previous tour back in 2008 as well. Well, we've got a little bit of move on the front now, Paul, with the 5 riders deciding enough is enough. Grifko wants a little bit more speed. Morku is straight after him.
Well, Mirko is a very rapid rider. You can see his pedaling style is completely different, and that has really put a bit of a problem into the legs of number 23, Giovanni Bernardo. He's saying that's too much for me.
Yes, well, that acceleration came from the champion of the Ukraine, both road race and time trial. Mirko was straight after him, but you're right, it looks as though Bernardo, no reaction there. That's goodbye to the break.
Yeah, well, he was put under a lot of pressure because of that acceleration, but did you see how quick Michael Mirko was? He's a real good track rider. His pedigree is on the track. He rides the 6 days. He can almost sense when a move is going to come, and if you can get straight onto the wheel, it's a lot easier than trying to bridge the gap.
20 kilometers, 22 miles to go to the finish. We'll shortly be on the Côte de Mont-Violette, which is the next climb. It's not very far in front of the leaders now. That's why Mirko in the polka dot wants to at least get another point. In fact, there's 2 places on the top on this one because it's a little bit harder. It's a 3rd category climb.
Yeah, so important.
Well, the continuing problem for Yahini Hutrovic, the champion of Belarus, is now sliding off the back on the climb. He is a sprinter, but it indicates just how steep this climb is. Well, when you lose a sprinter like Hutrovic, Paul, it's only short, but this gradient is almost 10%, so it's quite a hard climb.
I think it's the repetitive nature that's going to really hurt these riders once we start to get down to the finish, because every 5 kilometers we've got to climb once we start to get down to the last 15 kilometers to go.
Well, now you see the flatlands in the backdrop as we climb up to the high spots of the course today, and still just off the front there are the 2 riders who've been here all day. The men in black. On the left it is Jaroslav Popovic, on the right it is Jens Voigt for Radio Shack. The peloton now just keeping a fast tempo here, and if the riders at the back can't match it, then they get left behind.
Just have a quick look here as we get an official time gap from the main field to the leading group of riders. I would say we're just outside of the 2-minute mark. They're going to stop the clock there, Phil, around about 2 minutes and 8 seconds.
Which is pretty much what we're saying on screen, 2 minutes 7. That's about the right gap at the moment. 20 miles now left to race, 32 kilometers to the finish. The last 4 climbs now all come in the last 10 miles of the day or the last 16 kilometers. So they really do come thick and fast. And the last climb is the finishing line of the race, and the roads now stay narrow. We've now swung away. We're now running up. On the left shoulder of the riders is this beautiful sight, and they won't see it at the moment. It is, of course, the English Channel looking straight across to Great Britain. They're now running towards the finish, coming up from the south into Boulogne-sur-Mer. This is the Baie de la Conche. Another crash. Can you believe this? I've noted already down there Johan van Sommer of the Garmin shop, who was involved in the previous one, that again it's only because of the narrow roads. There was no obvious reason for this crash. Here we are, a little look back, as just wrestling his bike on the left of our picture here is Christoph Kern, who was in the breakaway in the green yesterday. Keep your eyes going right down to the bottom of the picture, as all of a sudden there's a touch of wheels again, I think, that has caused the pile-up, and they're exaggerated with the number of fallers because of the width of the road. There is nowhere for riders to go when the fall starts. There we are from the front view. Simon Gerrans from the Orica Green Edge has been left standing on the road at the moment. Now let's hope that is not serious. He might just need a new bike, because Gerrans, strong man on the Orica Green Edge team. We'll update you as we find out along the road. Right now though, getting on with the job in hand, the riders from Movistar at the front and Liquigas. This is the carnage we are leaving back at the road. Tyler Farrar is caught again, along with Johan van Sommer. The Katusha rider being helped up here as well. They were very, very much in evidence at the front of the race today. And there's another rider down there from Movistar. It looks like Rojas is down, who was second in the green jersey competition last year, and has said he wants stage wins this year. He's not interested in the green jersey. Well, he's left on the road. He is the Spanish sprinter and the former champion of Spain too. Meanwhile, these 4 riders are constantly attacking each other now. On the right is Morku. He's been attacking them at the front. He's come to the back for maybe a little bit of a breather, but he doesn't seem happy with the work rate of the other 3 riders, and he wants the points on the hills just up the road. Well, one rider not looking too good in that crash was Rojas Paul. He's been left on the road for the moment. Let's hope he gets back up. Simon Gerrans was standing on the roadside as well from the Orica Green Edge team. Let's hope it's just a bike change for him. But once again, these narrow roads, once they have a touch of wheels, there's nowhere for the riders to go to escape the problem.
Well, they're all nervous. You can see a very cut-up Tyler Farrar there as well. He was involved in that crash just a little bit earlier on, and these guys are now all scrambling to get themselves back into the main field. 123, Johnny Hugel, and he knows all about crashes. A crash made him very famous last year when he was catapulted off the road by a passing media car.
Second crash for Tyler Farrar on the right there. This time he's grimacing. He's got cuts on his elbow. In front of him is Robbie Hunter, who's been in 3 pile-ups, I think, today. The champion of South Africa, trying to pace him back. The first little group of riders rejoining the peloton. Check the flags out. The wind is in a bad position for a rejoining, because it's coming right across our television screen from the right. It makes it very, very hard in the crosswinds.
Everyone's nervous. Everyone is taking risks. I don't know exactly how that crash happened. One rider got catapulted straight out of the field, probably because of the nervousness of the stage, the fact that we're going onto small roads, small little climbs. Again, chaos at the back. This is Philippe Gilbert. He's looking for the team car.
And Gilbert still behind the third group, I think, on the road at the moment. He's just talking to his team car. He's got a teammate waiting for him. But you see, he can only go around the red referee's car into that group in front. He's waiting. Oh, he's got a problem with his shoe.
Well, you know,
Rojas has just abandoned Paul, so we left him on the road. Rojas has gone from the race with that crash.
Well, Philippe Gilbert is not the right time to have the wrong pair of shoes on here this afternoon, and not the best way to go for a shoe fitting as well at 40 kilometres an hour or 25 miles an hour. The chaos here, it's going to be very difficult for Philippe Gilbert, a teammate of Cadel Evans, to get himself back into the main peloton.
Well, he has gone back in. Well, Rojas is a rider who finished second to Mark Cavendish in the points competition last year. He didn't look very well when he was left on the roadside. The doctors were with him, and so now it looks as though he has abandoned the race. It's been confirmed that Joaquim Rojas out of the race. There's 2 riders gone today. We're looking at the peloton now. They are absolutely flying here. The remnants of the crash behind trying to rejoin. and there's some big names all trying to get back on here now. As we can see now that Orica, Green Edge are trying to get riders up. The gap to the leaders is just on 2 minutes, so they're surviving, and they're constantly under pressure by attacks from Michael Morku now. The peloton doesn't look too big from that shot.
Well, I have to say the leaders, because of the fact that we've got all this chaos going on behind, it might give them a slight advantage. But when you look at the face on these men in the main field, I still think they're going to turn the hammer down a little bit more once we start to get to the next couple of climbs. And the peloton, with its impetus and its speed, can wipe away 30 seconds on each of the climbs once we go over to the next few climbs of the day. So it's going to be touch and go for those 4 riders, but they will start to believe in themselves. Some of the big names caught out behind, obviously Simon Gerrans, the Australian national champion, but he's got Brett Lancaster up alongside him. They are battling now to try and get themselves into the main field.
The American sprinter Tyler Farrar is still in that chase group. Philippe Gilbert is still in that chase group. And where are we? Look here now. This is Mark Cavendish back here as well. So they've got to get back across the gap.
That's Cavendish in the white jersey with the rainbow bands around the middle, the champion of the world, winner of yesterday's stage. It just goes to show how you can turn everything completely upside down.
Christian Knies of Team Sky is here. Thomas Vauclair is at the front of this group as well. He's just getting himself back into some sort of shape. Vincent Jérôme, another good rider, number 26, is sat here at the back of the group. These are anxious moments now. Once we get into this corridor of the last 16 kilometres or 10 miles, we're constantly on the hills, and if anything happens on those narrow roads over the last 10 miles, Paul, they won't rejoin.
Well, they certainly won't. It's going to be very difficult to rejoin right now because of the speed as we go through the small town of Nesle and Departement number 62, and the gap is opening up quite dramatically because the chase is on at the front to try and pull back those leaders. Let's not forget, Andrei Grivko is the best placed rider in that leading group of riders. He's the one in the blue jersey there. He's only 38 seconds off the overall lead of Fabian Cancellara.
He's still the leader of the Tour de France and has been throughout the day, because he lost 38 seconds to Cancellara in the prologue, but he's got all of that back and more right now. There's no time bonuses in the Tour de France, so they race for real-time gains today. These 4 riders have every reason to keep the pressure on here because of the difficult nature of the last 20 minutes of the race today. And his title in London in a few weeks' time. 20 kilometres to go for the peloton. They are absolutely flying now. It's total chaos behind the pack just now.
I just noticed at the front end of that line, in about 4th or 5th position in the red and black jersey, Cadel Evans with a teammate riding alongside him, riding calmly and collectively as he can, thinking about what to do. Sanchez now just goes under 20 kilometres to go. He's got that gear problem sorted out. Now he's got to get himself back into the main field. This is not the time of the race field to have any problems at all. Cadel Evans continues to ride at the front. George Hincapie in front of him there. And really, these guys are doing a phenomenal job. It's as if they're trying to lead Cadel Evans out for the sprint. But Jens Voigt says, "Oi, boys, I'm a lot stronger than you are."
Well, Sky will have noticed the strength and the confidence of Evans here, because he did the same on the ride into Serein and almost pulled it off. Now, Sanchez in the chase group, he is the Olympic champion defending. He's also the king of the mountains of last year's Tour de France, and he was quoted in the press as saying he was going to have a go for the win today, probably why he's so annoyed. He's got a teammate up with the leaders here as they start to split again. And Morku has quickly got to get it round Ruben Perez there, who seems to have cracked on the climb.
Well, there's Minard as the man who's going to make the move, and Mirko just about to get across.
Well, this time on the climb, they have dropped Ruben Perez of Euskadel Euskadi. Morkov is having a problem to hang on to Sebastian Minard and indeed Andrei Grivko.
Well, he's concentrating. He's looking at the back wheel of Minard. He's trying to judge his effort. He's trying to roll himself back to that wheel there, and then he will see whether or not he's got anything else left in the gas tank this afternoon. They're stretching out. It's always Jose Ivan Gutierrez coming to the front in that lime green helmet for Team Movistar. 1.3 kilometres to the top of the climber. Grivko now puts the hammer down. They've gone past Minard, but you know, I have to take my hat off to Michael Mirko. He will not give up.
He wants the win. He needs 1 point at the top of this climb. There's nothing for second place as he goes up now. The race behind is under extreme pressure. This is an incredible stage for the Tour de France away from the high mountains. Morco knows he wants Grifko and he wants the point.
Watch out for this. This man is a track rider. He can push himself into that red zone a little bit more. They're shouting for Philippe Gilbert. Well, it won't be his day this afternoon as Mirko digs very, very deep there to try and get himself onto the slipstream. If he can just make the slipstream, he'll give himself a couple of minutes to recover, and he should be able to come out of the wind, out of the slipstream of Grifko, and get himself that one more point.
As the clouds roll in off the channel here, Mirko is finding there's a lot of thunderclouds over the Tour de France today. He has joined Grifko. Grifko saying, well, come and help me. He says, after I've taken the 1 point, I might give you a hand. We are now into this corridor of 4 successive climbs which lead us to the finishing line, and the peloton is still in disarray behind.
Well, I think the clock went a little bit haywire then, Phil. I looked down at the computer, it said 1.5 minutes. I thought that is absolutely impossible, but it seems to have corrected itself now, because it is around about 3/4 of a minute the advantage of those two riders over the front end of the main field, which is absolutely charging up this climb.
The top is just around the corner. This was the worry of all the riders, that the wind would blow today. It was very calm at the start in Orchy, but here on the coast it is blowing and it's hurting the race, and so too are these narrow roads with their twists and dips and dives. So now they're heading for the top of this climb, and he's looking for the point. 2 of them in tandem now, the remnants of a 5-man breakaway. Morku is the champion of the moment in the King of the Mountains. He's going through now. Grifko is the champion of Ukraine in 2 disciplines, time trial and road race.
And a powerful man when he gets onto a move like this. I tell you what, I bet he was very surprised when he saw the return of Michael Mirko. He must have thought to himself, I've got this in the bag here this afternoon. I've opened up the gap, but I don't think there's going to be any mercy coming from the man in second position there in the polka dot jersey. He wants to get maximum points again, and he comes over the top.
Well, he's worked very hard for that. He really did. Grifko was trying to go for gold and win the day. This is what Morkov wanted, and he's got it now. 1 more point in the bag. And it's not very far to the next one, Paul. It is only about 4 kilometres.
Alessandro Patacchi here, the man who was a great sprinter. He's got that lime green bike, and he too has got a problem with his chain.
Well, 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 and that is not good. Even though he is a sprinter and wouldn't win today, he doesn't want to be left behind at this crucial stage of the race. This is the peloton now. See how narrow the roads are. If you're strong and you can get to the front, you can literally block the progress of the rest of the race.
Well, these are the survivors of that breakaway. It was 5 men. They lost Bernardo, then they lost these 2 riders, Minar in the white jersey in front and Ruben Perez in the orange jersey in the second position. Shortly they will see the main field for the first time since the 5th kilometre of today's stage. They're looking over their shoulders waiting to see what's going to happen. It's BMC Racing, but Phil, that is not a very big main field. There's 4 kilometres, 2.5 miles time.
Well, the roads are narrow now. It also makes it difficult for our cameras to show you at the back of the race as well as the front. This race, though, is set to splinter again as they still... This is like Dan Martin here who's trying to get back. Where Dan must have been... That is why they've been racing at the back, to try and bring Dan Martin back into the action with Christian van der Velde on his wheel. These boys still trying to get in contention.
Talk about chaos on a day in the Tour de France when you expect it to be a simple day with a little bit of a flurry of activity at the end with a couple of climbs thrown in. All of a sudden everything goes wrong and there are bike riders smashed all over the Boulonnais.
Well, they need to get contacting because they are losing real time, and that is a serious situation for Christian van der Velde at the front of the race here. That's why he's taken control as he comes up the climb. He's not that far behind. There's still every chance they can rejoin. They've only got 5 kilometres or 3 miles though before they're on the next climb.
And then another 4 kilometres after that, there's another climb. The climbs keep getting at them, smashing them in the face. The yellow jersey of Fabian Cancellara, Phil, is sitting there in about 12th to 14th place. He's not done a thing wrong all day. He's just sitting there calmly and collectively and waiting. But Soto's got a very large number of riders. I've just seen Maxime Montfort in there. They're looking after their man this afternoon. Of course, Frank Schleck, maybe for the long term in this race this year. The Tour de France, he finished 3rd last year. But at the moment, they're looking after Fabian Cancellara to keep him at the top end of the leaderboard. If he survives today, Phil, and stays in the yellow jersey, I can see Fabian Cancellara staying in that yellow jersey right the way down to the weekend.
Well, that's always been his plan, and it's working out at the moment, but this is a very, very difficult sting in the tail today. We still have a couple of climbs to come up to the finish.
Well, this is Adam Hansen, number 115, a big Australian rider. We're now just behind the back end of the group at Van der Velde. They're calling it now the Group Van der Velde, Group Vogler, Group Philippe Gilbert, whichever way you would like it to be. The gap now is inside of 30 seconds. There's only 500 meters separating the two leaders and the peloton.
It's amazing, but they've managed to survive. There's only 2 climbs left. The last is the finish. Now, is Morku going to manage to hang on to the last climb out on the race course as they continue on a left turn for the peloton, which is still under extreme pressure? There are still a lot of riders chasing. We are now hitting 10 kilometers to the finish for the 2 leaders. 6 miles to go.
Well, 2 climbs to go as well. The next climb, though, Phil, is a brute. It's a 3rd category climb, and it's the Côte de Mont-Lambert. It is very steep at the bottom, and once you go over the top, you plunge into the outskirts of Boulogne-sur-Mer, and guess what? You've got to climb up to the finish line as well.
And a tricky one it is too. Right in the centre of the town, and it is narrow, and they make a right-hand sweep as they climb up towards the line. There's the peloton. They are now under 10 to go, and Grifko is no longer the virtual leader of the Tour. The gap is down to 28 seconds, 29 seconds. We just have 2 climbs left, a 3rd and a 4th category.
Well, I wonder if Team Sky are now starting to think Edvald Bosenhagen. He's in the group, but Andre Greipel has disappeared from the group. This is Bernie Eisel sitting at the front, setting the pace. Behind him, it's Michael Rogers. All of a sudden, Team Sky Pro Cycling, they have now decided to dictate the pace. Maybe it could be a finish for Edvald Bosenhagen.
Well, when Evans and Team Sky's Bradley Wiggins finished on the climb at Saran the other day, for some reason Bradley Wiggins was extremely annoyed with his team, and there was a little bit of a black air around the Team Sky bus, and I think it was because they didn't really look after him like the team of Evans had looked after Cadel Evans, who rode extremely well. I wonder if he will try just to snatch seconds. Time gaps could be real on this climb up to the line, and that's why I think Wiggins might just try something. You never know. Snatch seconds when you can. At the moment, the object of being at the front is not necessarily to win, but to be safe, because the leaders can't afford to slip back right now.
Trying to scramble up on the left-hand side, the lime green jersey there of Liquigas. They're trying to do everything they can. There's still a large number of Orica Green Edge riders in this group, and I don't think that Matthew Goss was involved in any of the accidents early on. He's probably thinking now that the chances are tilting much more towards his chance of climbing up the green jersey points classification, because Mark Cavendish has been left well behind.
Well, you can see the ups and downs of this beautiful area around Boulogne here. They're never flat at all now. These riders get swooping drops and then they climb again, and that they're being driven on all of the time now. Team Sky are getting a grip at the front, and that's a sign of a team with a big leader on it.
Well, this is the next group on the road. This is the group of Philippe Gilbert, Christian Van der Velde, trying to get themselves back into the race. They're still looking for 30 seconds.
Cheers for the 2 leaders. They move on towards Mont-Lambert here. And the Grifko clearly the stronger man of these 2 now. And the Côte de Mont-Lambert is a little bit more difficult than the others. It's 1.3 kilometers. Ouch, the legs have gone there. The legs went on Morkov, and Grifko has gone on. The only good news for Michael Morku is there's 1 point per second on this climb. But Grifko is now not making a bid for the King of the Mountains. He's making a bid to win the race down in Boulogne. And he is on terrific form. He's just won the double title of time trial and road race champion of his country. On the day in the prologue, he was 4th in the end. He led from out 4th rather, and he was out front. Now that's how close they are. So they've wiped out Morkov. He's had a good day, but he hasn't quite had a clean sweep of the hills today. He'll keep his lead in the King of the Mountains, and he won't worry about getting on the back of this peloton as they race for the finish. He'll just ride home now, which isn't easy when you've been out in front for such a long way today. Now Grifko, the only man who's left out in front of those 5 riders, and it really, if he looks over his shoulder, I doubt he'll see the top of this hill before they come all around him. It is such a hard running now. This is the last climb before the finish itself, as we run down the last 6 kilometers of the day once we're over the top of the climb. A defiant show by him though. Well, he's so determined, Paul. This man has paid the price. We're not surprised now. He's not going to try to hang on to the back of the peloton. His legs have gone for the day. He's the leader in the King of the Mountains tonight. And as he moves towards this is Basso at the front now.
Well, obviously trying to put it all together, because on the left-hand side you can see the green jersey of Peter Sagan. Everybody has said this is a Peter Sagan type finish this afternoon. But also in this group you can see Michael Rogers trying to make sure that they keep the presence of Bradley Wiggins at the front end of the main field. This is a battle between men who want to win the stage and men who want to win the Tour de France, not losing any time at all. This is Grivko just still battling away. He's hoping to get over the top of this climb and get himself a couple of points, but I'm sure he's going to get caught before the finish.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about that right now. He wanted to just get over the top, so he might be able to take a few deep breaths and go with the group over the top. The next climb is the finish line now. It's Ivan Basso who comes up, the Italian on the same team of Peter Sagan. He shut it down. Sagan is in this breakaway. He's put his man now in a position to win. That's terrific riding by Ivan Basso.
Well, the crowd need to push themselves back a little bit because there's not much room for these men to move up the outside. I noticed Frank Schleck of Radio Shack Nissan trying to get himself into a good position here as we get up to the top of this climb. It's amazing to think that a man like Ivan Basso will come to the front. He's a former winner of the Giro d'Italia. He's finished on the podium in the Tour de France. Now he is working as a domestique for a 22-year-old by the name of Peter Sagan.
But Basso has gone over the top. He's got the last King of the Mountains points out on the course today, just 2 for that, and those 2 points will put him in second place overall in the competition. But that, just look at this now, the launch and attack straight off the front. I think there's a bend in the road, that's why he slowed down to correct the corner. He's going to kick out of this corner. It is a rider here from the Omega Gas former Quick-Step team who's made his move. As he's made a move, and it's Sylvain Chavanel, the former champion of France now. The finishing line is exactly the same finishing line 2 years ago. Sylvain Chavanel won the French championship on. He knows the finish better than anyone. Well, this is the move, Paul. Let's remind ourselves, Chavanel won his French title on the same finishing line that we're racing to now. He knows the roads, he knows the running. 5 kilometres to go. I wonder if he's gone just a bit too early.
Well, he knew what he had to do. He had to try and take a long one to get away, but there's a rider coming across from Radio Shack Nissan. I'm not sure exactly who it is through the haze here, but if any man can pull this off this afternoon, it's going to be Sylvain Chavanel. He will be motivated by the fact that 12 months ago he won the French national title on this very same climb up to the finish line, and he will try and hope to survive. The main field seems to be slowing off a fraction. All Chavanel needs is 10 to 15 seconds lead, and he's got it in the bag.
Cadel Evans has moved all the men up there on the team BMC, including TJ Van Garderen. He wears a white jersey tagged onto the back. Chavanel looks over his shoulder. There is a little bit of a gap. He's using the downhill to take a few deep breaths and recover from the surge from the peloton. He's only 4 kilometres out, you know. It's only 2.5 miles to the finish now. He's gone under the 4 kilometre banner. He's got a gap, but it's Team BMC and Cadel Evans' squad who lead the charge.
Don't forget, Phil, he's in 3rd place in the overall standings as well. He's looking for 7 seconds. This man is no stranger to leaping out of a main field, getting himself a few seconds and getting himself the overall lead. He's French and he's racing on a road that he knows extremely well.
And he finished 3rd in the prologue time trial to get that time advantage. Best prologue time trial in his history he's ever ridden. Now it's really more up to Radio Shack. They've got to bring Chavanel back if they want to keep Cancellara in yellow tonight.
It is very, very rare in the sport of professional cycling for a Frenchman to expatriate himself to a Belgian team. This man did it because he wanted to learn the tools of the trade. He wanted to be able to ride the one-day classics like Paris-Roubaix, the Tour of Flanders and Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and he felt the only way to do that was to move across to Quick-Step. He has become an incredible racer. He's got a real nose for the move. He knows these roads, Phil, and look at the way he's taking these corners. He is going around those corners. He's clipping every edge there to try and get every little bit of an advantage before he starts the final climb. 12 seconds is his lead right now.
He's led this race in the past in the polka dot, the green jersey, the yellow jersey. He has finished 3rd in the prologue this year. He is a man on form. He is a terrific bike rider. He's also won 3 stages of the Tour de France, so there's nothing new for Sylvain Chavanel in the Tour de France. but this is one race he would love to win, and that's going to be a tricky corner for the rest of the field coming down.
It certainly will, Phil, and just look at the way he went round here and he thought, oopsie daisy, a little bit too fast into that one, but he corrected it. He knew what he had to do. The main field, all of a sudden, one or two of them have gone straight on there, and that looks like a rider from Movistar. It may well be Valverde himself.
It could be. It was right at the front, the way he's kicking off, that it could have been Valverde who's made a terrible mistake. He's way at the back of the peloton now. If it was him, Marcus Burkhardt is at the front of the race now, and it's up to BMC, it seems.
Well, this man knows what this final climb of the day is going to look like. It's pretty much all the way up to the finish line from here. 2 kilometers, 1.2 miles. Now his own teammates are trying to slow it down for him. Marcus Burkhardt in front of George Hincapie. It's 8 seconds the gap for this man, Sylvain Chavanel. He really is a fighter. He really has thrown the cat amongst the pigeons. He knows, look at the way he's sitting up. He's getting a little bit more time to recover. He knows what this final climb is like, Phil. It's almost a kilometer uphill to the finish line.
Kevin De Wert is the man who's moved forward there to try and calm down the chase here. He's been forced back now because Chris Horner has been forced to chase. They're trying to save the yellow jersey of Fabian Cancellara because there is a time gap at the top. He could well swing across to this rider from France.
Slipped up to 11 seconds the advantage. That still puts the yellow jersey onto the shoulders of Sylvain Chavanel. He's one of the rare riders in a bike race like this who can survive on the final slopes up to the top. Peter Sagan is sitting right on the wheel of Fabian Cancellara. Cancellara won't give him a gift ride to the finish on this occasion. He's there on the shoulders of the yellow jersey. They're all looking round now. Chris Horner is having to do a lot of work inside of 1 kilometre to go now, Phil, and it's going to start to climb up 700 metres to the finishing line.
It is not an easy climb here. A lot of the journalists walking to the finish line today could hardly speak when they got to the top. They were so out of breath. He'll make the turn, he'll sweep up towards the line. That is a very definite gap. If it counts 8 seconds, he's the next leader of the Tour de France. If he can hold it to the line, he looks over his shoulder, but they are coming at a real rush now.
Now's the time. He's got to find something special. The big move coming behind, and again it's BMC Racing trying to set something up. Those legs are starting to scream for Sylvain Chavanel.
Well, as they start to make way now, they start to break on the right here. They're trying to keep Cancellara back in this race as well. There's a rush on the left of the picture. Cancellara and Sagan are going in the middle as they break on the right as well. Now, can Peter Sagan control this one? Because it's going to be... Oh, there's a crash in the middle. A rider of Vacansoleil went down. That's broken up the peloton. They are out of this now. Cancellara is trying to... Sagan is over the top. Now he'll see the finishing line. Is there any stopping this man as he kicks again? Boysenhagen is on the right. Sagan is coming clear to win his second stage. He will consolidate his lead in the green jersey. And I think Cancellara will keep yellow as Sagan gets it. Cancellara close enough, probably a 1 second time gap. He's dancing all the way to the line. Boysenhagen second.
Well, Phil, 2 stage wins in 3 days for a 22-year-old is really something very remarkable indeed. And Bradley Wiggins is off the back, you know. I wonder if he was involved in that crash. If he was involved in the crash, he will get the same time as the rest of the field.
Yes, he will, under the rules. In the last 3 kilometres, if you are together when there's a fall, they will give you the same time as the riders you are with when you fell. So technically, all of these riders should be given the same time today.
Well, that was a pretty dramatic run into the finish. One rider even took an exit to the left-hand side there because he couldn't get around that corner. They were going up this climb so very, very quickly.
Well, the fact that Valverde didn't take part in that spin, I'm sure now it was him, Paul, that went off on that roundabout, caught him out. But Peter Sagan, this is the new Eddie Merckx in the world of cycling for sure, the 22-year-old. He can't do a thing wrong. Win number 15 of the season.
Yeah, but win number 2 out of 3 in the Tour de France, and yes, he really is a little bit of fun, this young man. Comes from a background of BMX, then went across to mountain bike racing, and now I think he's going to make a solid career in the Tour de France.
He rang up his friends in Slovakia and said, what should I do in the way of a little jig on the line if I win stages? They told him, I haven't quite worked them all out yet, but he seems to be changing them every time he wins. There he is. I think he'll keep yellow when we look at the clock today. So at the end, they really had to fight. What a terrific end it was to the Tour de France today.
Well, there's a confirmation. Peter Sagan. In fact, Edward Bosenhagen came up to get himself second place there.
Well, we're looking down here now. That was a terrific piece of riding by Peter Sagan, and all the work, remember, done by his veteran team captain there was Ivan Basso, who brought the race up to the lone leader, Grifko, and then he did the job. He did it really well. Boyson Hagen there sprinting to second place behind Sagan, and Cancellara just a little bit off it. This is Christian van der Velde coming in now. He had a rough ride today, Christian, involved in the crashes, and he would get probably a slightly different time up to the line here. This is just over 2 minutes, in fact, since the clock started. He was delayed in that crash. Let's have a look here. It looks like it's a Katusha ride, and it could well have been a bit of a squash there as those two riders fell on. Looks like it could have been Oscar Freire who was the rider through the middle of them. At first it seemed there's only going to be a few fall down. That's Wiggins on the left of the picture there, who was involved in the crash and lying against the barrier, so he was involved. The man in black on the right here, oh ouch. And but fortunately the international rule, which was started some years ago when Eddie Merckx was involved in a crash near the finish, and the referees decided it was unfair in a tussle for a sprint finish to dock riders real time against the quest for the GC, and they brought in that rule, which means you get the same time the riders you were with when you fell. At last the sun is shining and reflecting off the Alabaster coastline here as we continue our journey down from northern France. 214.5 kilometers, that's 133 miles, a long way between Abbeville and Rouen today. And we join the action immediately with a breakaway that has started right out at the beginning again. Looking down from the helicopter, our first glimpse of the peloton. They're getting a little bit of a move on right now, Paul, because they've lost quite a lot of time today.
Well, it looks like a Ripley day today, Phil, but we hardly go more than 100 metres or 300 feet above sea level. The fourth category climbs, 3 of them already behind us. The feeding station is on the horizon, and very shortly there is also a very important sprint point when the riders go through Fécamp and then they turn inland to head down towards Rouen.
Well, the Radio Shack boys on the left of our picture looking after their man in the yellow jersey. That's a very typical chase at the moment. Lotto also prepared to help here because they've got Andre Greipel as a likely sprinter. It's been an early morning breakaway again that's proved a point, and up front David Moncoutier, a Frenchman who once won on Bastille Day at Digne-les-Bains, has snapped up the 3 single points for the 3 hills so far. So in a couple of days he might challenge our Danish leader there in Morkov. Here they are, Arashio, one of only 2 Japanese riders to finish the Tour de France in history. David Moncoutier is in the red, and Anthony Delaplace of the Series Sojourn team. They're the 3 escapers today. Between them, they've ridden 15 Tours de France.
Yeah, a little bit of action at the back. The doctor has been extremely busy, I'd have to say, Phil, over the last 48 hours, because there's been an awful lot of crashes. He's been doing his best to look after everybody and keep them up and getting them back onto their bikes. Rather an interesting story yesterday, because Martin Jelinghi finished the stage, and then when he went to hospital they found out that he actually had a crack in his hip, and so he wasn't able to start this morning.
Yes, it was a clean break, as his team told us this morning, which indicated that for that reason he didn't feel the excruciating pain of a fracture, and he was able to finish the stage, but sadly he's out of the race. It's a little bit of a sadness for us because he's quite a character, and he's weakened, of course. His Rabobank team now, which are trying to support the Amgen Tour of California winner, Robert Gessing, to win this Tour de France.
Yeah, we get some magnificent views today. The riders, from once they get to the coastline at Dieppe, they follow this coastline for a long, long time. It's nicknamed the Alabaster Coast because of these magnificent limestone rocks with a little bit of a grey-black flint intrusion.
And then the bad news is the Alabaster coastline is receding at the rate of 1 metre a year. So don't buy any of those houses on the top there.
These are the leaders. This is the man who started the break, Yukiya Arashiro. He rides for Team Europcar, has the honour of being one of the first Japanese riders ever to finish the Tour de France, which he did a couple of years ago. I suppose theoretically he wasn't the first because he actually finished behind the other Japanese rider who finished the same year. Looking into the face here of Anthony Delaplace, he's already been in the breakaway very early on. He's 148th overall. But the man who I find it a bit strange to see him here at the Tour de France is the man in the red jersey, because David Moncoutier at the start of this season said, no, I'm not going to ride the Tour de France this year. I'm too old. It's too hard. I want to dedicate myself to the Vuelta a España, where he's been the winner 4 times of the King of the Mountains classification. And here he is in the Tour and in the breakaway.
Yes, and he's never led the King of the Mountains even in the Tour de France either. And it's most unusual for a Frenchman to win the King of the Mountains in the Tour of Spain. because the Spanish have some very good climbers. But this will be his last season as a pro, and I think that's why he's been persuaded to have one more final crack at what is his 11th Tour de France now.
Yeah, he's won 2 stages in the past. In fact, one time he won on the 14th of July. Today is the American national holiday, Independence Day, but of course the big day for France is the 14 Juillet. There's Jens Voigt in the black jersey of Radio Shack Nissan, and a big smile on the face of Fabian Cancellara. I wonder if anybody can take that yellow jersey away from him before we get into the Jura Mountains.
So Jens Voigt, our man of the pacemaking early on in Team Radio Shack. Let's have a little bit more about Jens. Always smiling even when he's in trouble and under effort. This man will not have an easy race because he causes himself so much pain. He was twice a stage winner of the Tour. He's briefly worn the yellow jersey as well, and we've seen that terrible crash he had a few years back as well. He is all okay at the moment, and he's doing a lot of work just now. Now we've got a problem here, and this is the Argus rider at the back. It's Jon Hugo of France, 180th overall, the Argus rider, and he's off and running. Routine at the moment, Paul, but the wind might catch them a little bit along this coast now.
Well, they'll have to be very attentive because the wind, when it comes in off the English Channel here, it does really tend to rip the riders up from the right-hand side or the left-hand side of the screen. And if you're not attentive and riding at the front end, and if somebody decides to put the hammer down, you'll see this main field split into 4 or 5 different groups. You can see Radio Shack, they're adopting exactly the same tactic that they've adopted since Fabian Cancellara got himself the overall lead. They're sitting at the front, making a tempo just to lock that breakaway in. They know that in the latter part of this race they will get assistance from the teams of the sprinters. I've seen on occasions Liquigas coming forward because they're of course wondering whether or not their man Peter Sagan can get himself win number 3.
Just looking down there, Paul, when they get to Fécamp, they will swing inland away from that coastline, and then they'll realise they're not that far from the finish in Rouen. It'll be the 20th time we've been to Rouen with the Tour de France. Welcome back. Refreshing sight, I would think, for the riders, because today is actually warm on the Tour de France and the sun is out as the riders continue to cross the beautiful towns here, as shortly we'll turn inland once we get to Fécamp and head down towards the finish in Rouen. They're not far away from where the River Seine, which goes through Paris, goes into the ocean here, or the Manche, at Le Havre. All right, well, our reporters were very busy before the start today, and now we can join Steve Perino as he chats with George Hincapie.
George, you've been at this longer than anyone. If you look at your rivals and Wiggins, they're down one guy. How do you imagine that reaction is going right now?
Well, you know, I'm sure they're trying to not let it get them down. Obviously, we're happy we still have everybody. The first week of the tour is just so stressful and dangerous. It's really important to always stay together and, you know, do that little bit of extra work to keep our guy out of the wind and out of trouble. So far things are going well for us, and hopefully it continues that way.
Have you been in a situation where you're one man down? And again, you know, sometimes it takes an outsider's perspective to understand what's going on with some other guys.
Yeah, we've been in that situation before, and it's not a good thing for sure. But, you know, everything's still possible, even with the 8 guys, 7 guys. You know, so it's not like they lost the tour yesterday by any means.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely right, George. George, the most experienced man in the Tour de France. He's done it more times than anybody else now, because this year he's competing in his 17th Tour de France, and the previous record was 16. Well, it takes a motorbike to keep up with the riders in the Tour de France on a normal day, that's for sure. And the crowd in this area, we don't come around this part of the tour route very often in France. We go to Rouen, we've been there 20 times by the time we get there today, but this particular route along the coastline is not one that we see a lot of with the riders of the Tour. The crowd appreciating that. So the breakaway is 3 riders up front, and Fabian Cancellara is the leader of the Tour. He settles down at the head of the peloton as we wander along the Alabaster coastline as well. This is part of the nuclear power plant here.
It puts out 1,300 megawatts. It was built, it took 10 years to build from 1977 to 1986. The only thing that concerns me a fraction is they use water from the English Channel for cooling down those 4 reactors.
Well, they'll put the water back in once they've got it nice and warm, I'm sure. As we continue, the peloton themselves seeing all of the views today, because the way the race route is come right down the coastline today on what is the large part of the whole department of the Seine Maritime, The coastline's about 70 or 80 miles long, 120 kilometres long.
What a beautiful coastline it is, very dramatic, and the sea is looking a wonderful colour this afternoon as these three riders here are enjoying their day at the front of the Tour de France. So 6 minutes and 15 seconds. We've got all of the climb, well, three of the major climbs behind us, but it'll still be a little bit of a lumpy ride once we turn inland and start to head down towards the finishing line in Rouen.
Yeah, we are riding 300 or 400 feet above sea level at some points, but it's definitely a day for the sprinters. But Arishiro himself is actually quite a good sprinter, the rider here in green, with his 10 victories over his year, only one ever in Europe itself, a small race. He's setting the pace. Leaders in the Tour de France are lovely undulations now. The scenery changing a little bit as we line up. We've still got just on 60 miles left to race here, slightly less. The three leaders out front today from 5 mile point, 6:01, so it's virtually 6 minutes. They're just coming through, nipping seconds off at the moment. And the three leaders we've got are Yukiya Arashio, the Japanese rider, David Moncoutier and Anthony Delaplace. So out in, if the race were to end, by the way, right now, then we would have our first ever leader of the Tour de France. Arishio is the man who has gained the most time in the breakaway so far, or lost the least time, if you like, to Fabian Cancellara. He'd be the leader now by 3 minutes and 57 seconds. And that would be a great piece of... but unfortunately, it doesn't end there, does it? No, it does end at the finishing. So as we watch the peloton now going along, no wind indication there. We now have a great interview coming up. Before the start this morning, the defending champion of this race is Cadel Evans, and here's Steve Perino talking with him now.
Cadel, as a team leader, you can certainly imagine the position that Wiggins is in. What are the challenges of a leader being one man down?
Certainly, every man helps, and you'd rather be firing on 8 cylinders than 7. That's always the way. That's the way it goes, and that's part of racing the Tour.
Yesterday, TJ was saying that you helped him keep his cool there in the final moments. Who do you turn to days like today to get your zen?
To get my zen, sit in the bus, thinking about nothing. No, having George Hincapie's really the cool, calm and collected guy of the whole peloton, and him being my main man, especially in the finals there. It's you have all the reason to stay calm and concentrate on the task at hand.
Well, you certainly look cool now. Good luck to you.
Cadel Evans then, ready for another day in the saddle. He's in the big peloton, of course, at the moment, which is now less than 6 minutes behind the leaders. We're approaching the sprint point here in Fécamp, 74 kilometres to go to the finishing line. And then we'll turn our backs on the channel and turn for Rouen as we go in a southeasterly direction to the finish today. Now, I think they might sprint for this. If they don't, I wouldn't be surprised, because these boys aren't contenders in the green jersey, but there are 20 points at stake, and Arashio is a very, very good sprinter. And there it is, no sprint, so he's gone over the top anyway, so the best sprinter won, even though he didn't sprint there. But now we are interesting in the main field here. They were looking at the... they move on to the fourth category climb now, where there's another point for Moncoutier, but the peloton, this we should see is a sprint royale. We're briefly back with the leaders, Paul, but talking in the peloton, we've seen Sagan scalp the riders on the strongman's finish up the 2 hills, but he's not quite so good against the pure sprinters on the flat, is he yet? So, as I say, the sprinters are in the backpack, and we expect to see Cavendish go, but do you think Sagan is not quite that quick? Well, I'll get the question away to you in a second, Paul. This is now approaching the sprint point of 400 metres. That wasn't their flag earlier on as they continue through here. Nice little crowd in Fécamp. We're at the point now where the race leaves the channel and goes inland to Rouen straight after the sprint itself. And they also go on to a very small climb.
Yep, the little climb of the Côte de Toussaint. Yeah, I think coming back to Peter Sagan, Phil, there are different kinds of sprinters. You've got guys who can do the 100 metres and guys who can do the 200 and 400 metres. Sagan needs a little bit of a climb, I think, to use his explosive acceleration, and that means that his sprint is not quite as fast as the real excessive speed of a man like Mark Cavendish or Matty Goss.
Well, that was the main sprint point here in Fécamp. It's the only race for the green jersey today. There's been no sprint amongst the 3 leaders. I think we expected that. Arashiro is the best sprinter here anyway, and he's got the line, gets 20 points. but there will very definitely be a very good sprint for the 4th place, which is worth 13 points to the winner. First 15 riders over the line in total get points. It'll be a battle. Mark Cavendish appears to be moving to the front of the peloton, which indicates he's still taking an interest in this competition. He was the winner of it last year as the first British rider. Also moving up there is the green jersey holder of the day, and that is Peter Sagan, who's got two stage wins to his credit. Situation at the moment is Sagan leads the competition with 116 points. Cancellara is second with 74, and Mark Cavendish is third with 73 points. So it's going to be important for these riders to try and get up there and get some more points. As I say, Paul, 4th place is worth 13 points.
13 points, 11 for 5th place, and 6th place will earn you 10 points. If you cross the line in 15th place, you'll earn yourself a single point. But a single point at the end of 3 weeks could win or lose you the competition.
Look, Mark Cavendish lost the points competition in this year's Tour of Italy on the last day by a single point when he'd led it for a long, long way. Terrific.
Briefly on the front there, he's obviously at the front of this pack because he'll be looking after Mark Cavendish. In fact, Team Sky said this morning that they were going to get Bernie Eisel and Bosenhagen to look after Mark Cavendish at the intermediate sprint and the final sprint as well.
We'll enjoy the view now because very shortly the riders will be going left and away from the channel. It's a beautiful day here in Fécamp as they continue towards the little climb which takes them away from this town. They climb up the cliffs, not literally, on the left hand side as they leave town. The last climb of the day up the hill, the Côte de Toussaint, and that will leave them then just 44 miles, 71 kilometres to race.
Yeah, but you can see they've accelerated to get themselves ready for this sprint, to put the sprinters in the right position for this dash to the line. And you can see what effect this slight acceleration has had on the time gap. It was up as high as 7 minutes and 20 seconds about 4 kilometres ago. Now we've come back down to 6.5 minutes.
We are in the town now of Fécamp. The peloton are heading up for the only sprint point of the day, apart from the finishing line itself. And this is very important. It's the race for only 4th place behind the 3 leaders. But Cavendish, Goss, Sagan, and I suspect too the Rabobank Renshaw will also have a go here, and Greipel.
Well, we get a quick look there. We've talked about the Benedictine liqueur just a little bit earlier on. Well, that in fact is the Benedictine Palace down there, which was built back in 1882 and inaugurated in 1888.
We're on the small climb leaving town here of Toussaint, and the man in red's won them all today so far. He's got 3 points. He's moved into 2nd place in the King of the Mountains. He'll consolidate but can't take the lead off Michael Morkov, the Danish leader, who's back in the bunch for the first time on a road race stage this week. He's been in the break for most of them. And he heads up towards the top. We will swing back, of course, to see the sprint finish. It's unusual to get 2 major prizes being contested almost at the same time today, as we're seeing the 3 leaders heading up the last climb of the day. So continuing on the climb here of Toussaint, and I think David Moncoutier will not be challenged. He will go through over the top of Anthony Delaplace once he sees the finishing line and put that point in the bag.
Well, I'm not quite sure about the tempo there because he hasn't even attempted to do that now. That's a surprise to me.
Well, let's get back to the sprint anyway, because here is the lead out as well, and it's Orica Greenedge trying to do it now for Matthew Goss. But look at this, 4th man in the line, Paul, is Mark Cavendish.
Right on his wheel in the orange jersey, that is Mark Renshaw. Now they're all moving up. There's Peter Sagan now trying to get himself onto the wheel of Mark Renshaw. He's not doing any argy-bargy at this point in time. They're just waiting now. Cavendish is locked onto the wheel of Matt Goss. Amazing to think that 12 months ago, Phil, he was the lead-out man for Mark Cavendish. Now he's got to try and figure out how can he beat him to the line.
Well, he's launching. Goss has launched now. Now can he make it? But Cav is going to come on him, and Renshaw trying to match Mark Cavendish. Now can Matthew Goss hold Cavendish on the line? It is going to be inch perfect for Mark Cavendish, and coming up on his left side in a rush was Peter Sagan, but that wasn't quite quick enough. Cavendish, perfect timing here.
Well, he didn't want to push it too much at this point, but he's just making sure that he gets his wheel across the line just ahead of Matthew Goss there, and making a last-minute dash for the line there, the green jersey of Peter Sagan. He's proving he's almost as fast as these guys on the flat.
Yes, he comes late too, and he has to get round the orange jersey of Mark Renshaw, but Cavendish comes smoothly off the wheel of Goss. Goss knew it was Cav as he looked across at him, and on the line Probably Sagan getting 4th, I would think there. We'll wait till we get the result officially.
I think Mark Renshaw, Phil, just got that 3rd place with the lunge for the line. He could see Sagan coming up, so he just pops his wheel across in front of him. So, but Sagan is taking this serious. The funny thing is, 1st, 2nd and 3rd, you turn the clock back a couple of years, those guys were always on the same team.
Well, if Mark Cavendish gets the stage win today, he will also get the green jersey, probably as race leader of the points, but we'll see. Just have another little look at that. Of course, it depends on the final location of Peter Sagan in that sprint as to whether he would get the green jersey. Here we go. This is the lead out, and the second rider in the line is Matthew Goss, followed by the world champion Mark Cavendish. Then comes Mark Renshaw in the orange and Peter Sagan in the all green jersey. And the other rider there is Alessandro Petacchi, but he didn't get up at all. Now on the move, waiting for the last possible moment before he comes out of the draft of the Australian sprinter. Renshaw makes his move, realises it's not going to work, and almost sits up and almost lost 3rd place there to Peter Sagan. We'll wait for the official results, but it looked to me as though it was indeed Sagan who got 4th in that sprint, not 4th. To keep up with the Tour de France, you'll need the most advanced digital experience of its kind. Go to nbcsports.com/TDF Live and get Tour de France Live. For a limited time, get Tour de France Live for $29.99. Some people enjoying fishing here, just away from where the race is passing through now. The leaders are passing through quite a heavy rainstorm, while the main peloton are only feeling a few spots, but they'll probably catch it very shortly. Change and a rush to the front now of other riders trying to pick up the tempo. The red jerseys of Team Katusha, perhaps thinking of Oscar Freire, the 3 times world champion, to see if he can get up in the sprint today. Well, change of countries, change of scenery there, Paul, as we continue on our way here. The peloton now heading to the slightly damper roads just ahead.
Yeah, that giraffe we saw just a few moments ago, Phil, I'm not sure whether it was a reticulated giraffe or a Rothschild's.
I'm sure it was reticulated. They're into another roundabout here. And interesting that Katusha have now put quite a lot of men on the front here, which means that perhaps they're thinking of Oscar Freire today.
Well, Oscar Freire was in the mix, and I think he was the man responsible for that crash yesterday. He's a very agile sprinter, and he tried to get through a gap that I don't think was there, but once he got his shoulders into it, the gap appeared quite dramatically.
Well, we're on the ripples. We'll drop off the high roads and down the valley, and then we'll have that little climb just before the finish, and then it's downhill and a flat finish on the Keys here in Rouen. Not really the sprint finish, I wouldn't have thought, for Oscar Freire. But here we are, the wet roads with the breakaway now, and David Moncoutier in that red jersey. He's already a previous winner in the Tour de France, you know. He's won a couple of stages in the Tour de France. I remember back in 2004, he won in Figeac, and proud moments for him. The colours of the team were different then, but they're just the same now. And then again in Digne-les-Bains.
2005 was much more important to him, though, because it was Bastille Day, the 14th of July, le 14 juillet, a big day for the French. It was their Independence Day, if you like, and for him, he just is quite a remarkable guy. 37 years of age, 5'10", 152 pounds, and his strength, it's all about climbing.
And probably last year he was the youngest rider, I think, in the Tour de France last year. 4:18 is the gap.
There's Cadel Evans, and this man so far hasn't done anything wrong. He started the season off extremely well with a victory in the Criterium International in Corsica, in fact, where the Tour de France will start next year. He's come through with the Tour of Romandy, he's done the Criterium du Dauphiné, and now he's getting himself ready to try and defend his title as the winner of the Tour de France last year. And his team are all over him, but what a nasty little cloudburst this is.
This has really come down all of a sudden, so they didn't escape it, the peloton. It is now raining very, very heavily. It won't last very long, that's the only good news. And they'll come out of the cloud. And they've got to watch these roads now. They're going to become a little bit glacial for a moment. They're very, very wet.
Well, that's the worst thing about having a bit of a hot spell, which they've had in this part of France. Then all of a sudden you get the first little bit of rain like this, and it makes the road much more slippery than if it had been raining for 3 or 4 days. Because if you've got that continuous rainfall, it actually clears away a lot of the oil. But here, the oil will still be mixing with the water, making it just a little bit slippery.
Well, let's see who's doing the work on the front now. We've got Française Desjeux in the white. Katusha have kept their men up there, despite what Popovic was saying to them, in the red. And also Orica Green Edge have got men up there as well. So Nissan have done most of the work, to be expected. 51% today. Green Edge at 29%. Orica, Katusha, AG2R and Sky are all part with Sprinters on them. Sky not really helping Mark Cavendish, only doing 3% of the work there. And that's because it's not their intention to help Mark on this year's Tour de France.
Coming from Arashiro, now he's decided these guys haven't got the power to stay with him anymore, so he's going to make it a lone effort.
Do you know what I looked at his face about 5 miles ago and I was thinking to myself, he's tired.
Well, there you go. He's outfoxed the old fox himself, hasn't he? As he now makes this move, and I'm not sure whether Moncoutier is going to take up the pacemaking here. He probably knows in the back of his mind that they're going to get caught towards the end of the day, and he will look for another breakaway later on in the Tour de France to try and get himself some points for his assault of the King of the Mountains classification.
Well, he's not really resisting at the moment. We'll see. But now Delaplace has decided he's got to try and bring it back, and Moncoutier's taken the other Frenchman's back wheel. So they're racing back. An interesting move, that pole, and did it going downhill, I think, because he went away straight away, and this is a good sign that we've never had a Japanese stage winner of the Tour de France. Why not start today? But I'm not too sure, because they're right up on him again now.
Well, anyway, it's all back together, and he went round that corner like a man possessed as he opened up that gap. But the better part of Valerie said, well, maybe I'd better stay in the contact with these guys, because we've got more chance of surviving for just a little bit longer if there are still 3 pairs of very strong legs.
Shaking out the effort of the attack, gone back into 3rd position there, Yukiya Arashio. There's the peloton, still a big pack here nonetheless, and I don't know yet if well, there's my answer, they haven't yet rejoined, but they're coming up quickly.
Yeah, it takes a long time, especially when the main field is going very, very fast indeed, and it looks like he's being left up to his own devices now, straight across that traffic circle. Nice bit of agility there, bit of concentration. You've got to be alert all of the time to make sure you can make a move like that, and to do that you have to lift up your pedals, and you can sail over the top of a point like that.
Over the central traffic furniture. Well, this is Nibali, who's the most important man left behind here at the moment. The other rider I was starting to tell you about, Jean-Christophe Perrault, is the AG2R team leader, who is in this line as well. But now they're quickly moving back up towards the peloton with assistance here from his teammate, which is Sylvester Smith.
Well, just check out the way he's zigzagging left and right. He's looking for any possible bit of slipstreaming from the motorbike, from the cars. He's using everything that he can, and as long as he does this and doesn't actually slipstream for a long time, the referees will take another look. And it's a very good piece of moving that he did. He gets into the back of the car, like if you're driving in an Indy car or if you're driving a Formula 1 racing car, you get into the slipstream and then you flick round.
Well, he's got on, and Smith had a job keeping up with him. He didn't know which way he was going next there. The other rider on the back is Daniel Oss, 56. So as we continue now, we are running out of road for these riders. They're going to have to really slice into that lead. It's still 3 minutes and 17 seconds for the 3 riders. These are good racing roads now because they're narrow and they're twisty. So the leaders won't come into sight until they're almost caught. 22 miles now from the finish. But again, we've seen a situation that could change the yellow jersey's destiny. Vincenzo Nibali was the man in the biggest trouble here because he is a pre-race favourite. But he's safely back in the pack as he races towards the finish again. 8 p.m, that's the time for our prime time show, and you'll probably be reporting Matt Goss as the winner, not of course Mark Cavendish, but we'll find out, won't we, Bob? Hans gone up here at the back of the field. This is Christophe Kern. You remember him? He was in that big breakaway on the first road race stage of the Tour de France. The Abbey de Saint-Wandrille is another beautiful abbey here, Paul, and these riders can't see any of these lovely monuments today.
This abbey, in fact, was founded in 649 when the first church was built on this site dedicated to Saint Etienne, and that was later on added to in the 1500s. But it was knocked down and rebuilt by the Huguenots in 1562.
Here we are, back with the leaders. They are still there, and the kilometres are ticking off. We're now inside 20 miles to go to the finish, 30 kilometres left. They haven't given up hope. The time is saying they're not going to make it, 2 minutes 40, but they've got to keep trying. To the left there, over the shoulders of Arashiro. He knows they're coming now. It's only a matter of time before they do catch them up. Another fine piece was this by the local pompier, the fireman here. down in the village of Saint Martin.
Oh, a little move here from De La Place. He wants to extend his advantage if he can, and this is on the early slopes of that little roller of a climb, but he's only 17 seconds.
We're looking now at the leaders as they just started to get in sight of the peloton. The leaders have started to split up. This is an attack now. This is Grifko again from the peloton launching an attack.
Well, Grifko was high up in the overall standings after a very good individual prologue, but he lost some time the other day after he'd been in that long breakaway. This is a powerful move by him, but he will not ruffle the feathers, I don't think, of the organisation in the main pack.
But look at this now. We're on the climb. It's only a small little climb, this, but they are trying desperately to get over the top. We are now 10 kilometres from the finish. That's 6 miles from the line.
Well, from the top of the climb, Phil, it's going to take them around about 10 or 11 minutes only to get down towards the finishing line, as the 15-second gap is still there. Coming across, there are a few more riders. The men in the main field now must not panic. The sprinters have to really hold on to their boots.
So Grifko's launched the attack from the peloton. He's got some takers here as well. Arashiro is in trouble as the two Frenchmen try to ride for home now past the Spanish flags. No Spanish riders in our camera lens at the moment. In fact, Arashiro has clawed his way back. Now, once over the top, it is very rapidly downhill towards Rouen.
They just spotted the South African flag just at the side of the road. They're flying high in support of Robbie Hunter and Daryl Impey. But again, there's a little move coming up. This is Philippe Gilbert.
Well, good for Philippe. Despite the injury down his left shin, Philippe Gilbert is trying to reach them. This is the sort of opportunist move he would make.
Well, you know, he was my tip to try and win the stage yesterday. He went down in that very nasty crash, and I thought there wasn't another chance left in this bike race for Philippe Gilbert. But once you put a little climb on the running towards the finish, he has got the power. This is the Philippe Gilbert, Phil, of 12 months ago.
Absolutely, and these are the moves that last year led to 24 race victories for him. The other riders who are looking at each other at the moment here. Number 88 is David Moncoutier being brought back now. Is he going to be able to have the legs to get onto the train? I'm not sure.
Well, this man here has not got any friends at all. He's getting some race information coming from his team manager there, probably saying, go on, full on now. You've got the big chance here with a slight advantage over the main field. But you know what, Phil, I think it's all going to come back together anyway.
Well, Gilbert, if anybody can do it, it is Gilbert. And what a great ploy too by Team BMC, who are the rest of them are looking after the leader, Cadel Evans.
Chavanel is the next man to come forward there. That's the man in the pale blue jersey just in front. He is in second position overall, tied on time with Bradley Wiggins. He only needs 7 seconds advantage. But the main field, Phil, they are just about ready to pounce.
The other riders up here are Pinot and Bouet, who's also come across, as they're now looking as though the peloton's taking a greater interest. They're almost over the hill. We will start to run down now, and it'll have to be done by the sprinters teams to bring these riders back.
It looks to me very much as if it's Orica Greenedge getting themselves very organised on the front end of that big mass of riders. Hovering around in the middle in the yellow jersey is Fabian Cancellara. There he is, no threat at all. Over on the right-hand side, that is the line of Orica Greenedge. It's almost all back together, and David Moncoutier can see his own teammate now coming up alongside him.
Well, they led today for 200 kilometres, but it's every man for himself now as they've been swept up by the advanced scouts from the peloton. The peloton, I think, will come after them straight away now.
Well, another move coming once again from Cofidis, but it's pretty much all together. As soon as they regroup, Phil, you will start to see the teams of the sprinters getting themselves organised to prevent any more of these flurries of attacks.
The Liquigas team, the Lampre team down there of Alessandro Patacchi have suddenly appeared up. And this now is Chavanel in second wheel. And Samuel Dumoulin is the rider in red. He's a sprinter as well and a former stage winner in this region of France, in the Tour de France. But they're only dangling in front.
Yes, he was a winner of a stage in Nantes. You've got to take your hat off to Sylvain Chavanel. He really is an aggressive bike rider. He's looking for any possible opportunity. Oops, nasty bit of traffic furniture once again. Somebody's caught in the middle, riding right on the crest of that traffic circle.
Well, he's got out of it and flicked down onto the left-hand side of the road, but there are again dangerous moments as they run down to the last few kilometres of the race. Next banner they'll see is 5 kilometres to go, then they'll get the countdown kilometre by kilometre. Samuel Dumoulin, one of the smallest riders in the race, but he can pedal a bike quickly, followed by Sylvain Chavanel, the rider who almost stole the show yesterday in Boulogne-sur-Mer.
Well, Samy Dumoulin had a pretty good season last year with 6 victories to his credit, but he won the opening race of the season in France this year in the Grand Prix d'Ouverture de Marseille. As we see now, one of the survivors of the breakaway going straight out through the back of the main field. That was Bryce Fellio also getting dropped.
Still 3 riders. I'm not too sure who that rider is from the Vacances Soleil, but it could well be Wouter Poels, who's got himself onto the back of this team, of this breakaway. He's a big man. The peloton, he's not able to work since he come across, though. He's just sitting there waiting to see if this break makes any progress.
Now there's the orange and blue jerseys of Rabobank. They're looking after Mark Renshaw. We could, in fact, Phil, here this afternoon have 3 individual lead-outs by the teams who've got sprinters.
And it's a sort of course that can cope with that sort of a different set of lead-out teams coming into the finish. Big wide bridge when we cross the River Seine shortly, and it's the last kilometre as they run into the finish. Here we go.
Well, that's the bridge that they will cross over in a short while there, Phil. They'll swing over to the right and then left, and it's a straight shot at the finishing line. Very, very rare that a breakaway manages to survive in a situation like this on the run-in towards the finish, because the peloton can push its pace up to 60 kilometres an hour, which is in excess of 40 miles an hour.
This is the long descent now, where they use the biggest gear they've got on the bike, and they'll hit speeds, as Paul has said, in excess of 40 miles an hour, 70 kilometres plus. The peloton, just look at the speed of them coming down. This is a perfect road for a real flat-out chase.
Well, to put it into perspective, we just hit 5 kilometres to go. That's 3 miles of racing, and Phil, that is going to take them not very much more than 6 minutes.
At the most, I would think, with a lot of it downhill before we run onto the banks of the Seine. Then we swoop over the river itself, and then we turn left and line up for the line itself. They're saying 5 seconds. That's a long way to go on the right-hand side.
Cancellara said, enough is enough, Mr. Chavanel. I'm going to keep my yellow jersey on my own shoulders here this afternoon. I've had Popovic working his heart out. I've had Voigt working his heart out. I'm going to nail this all back, and you can come to the finishing line with me.
Well, Sylvain Chavanel, just 7 seconds he requires, exactly what he required yesterday. They took it back before the finish, and now the peloton are taking it back again.
Well, that was a little flurry of activity by Fabian Cancellara. Now it's other teams moving forward. We've still got in the second, third, fourth, fifth position, you've got Lotto Belisol. The last rider, theoretically, to launch Andre Greipel into the lead was going to be Greg Henderson, the Kiwi rider, riding in his first Tour de France.
They are swept up at 4 kilometres to go. Mr. Windmill on the left is just about to be caught back as well, Samy Dumoulin. And now it is Lampre, and they're riding for Alessandro Petacchi. 176 wins in his career as a cyclist, but he's going to have to take on the best boys in the world, because if you look down the ladder there, Paul, you'll see the white jersey of Mark Cavendish, and right on his wheel again is the green jersey of Peter Sagan.
But he's on the wheel of Bernie Eisel, the rider in front of him in the white jersey with a black strip down the middle. These two men have managed to get themselves through another stage. Tony Martin 196, Luis Leon Sanchez 155. They're with Tommy Danielson also.
I'm afraid our riders in the surgery at the back and with the broken bones have dropped off the back of the peloton to ride in, but that's fine by them today. This is the dangerous part of the race now, as the sprinters want to gain their day before the mountains take away the flat roads of the Tour de France. There's a lot of movement to gain, but Paul, they must be coming down here now in excess of 55 kilometres. Now
they've gone down.
Again, a touch of wheels, and Cavendish is in the middle of that one at the moment, and so too I think is Boysenhagen, but they've gone down in that pile-up. Again, a touch of wheels in the middle of the race.
Sagan was in the middle there, and he went down. I don't know who went down. They went just down in front there. Cavendish had somebody in front of him, and I think he got round.
Well, we'll check again, but certainly Robbie Hunter again has gone on the ground. He was in 3 crashes yesterday.
You know what? I thought that was the jersey of the world champion, but in fact it was Robbie Hunter's jersey of the South African champion. So Hunter went down. Now it's going to be a chance for Lotto Belisol.
No,
Cavendish
he's down.
is down on the ground.
Cavendish. It is Cavendish. Sadly, he's down. Looking a little bit stunned at the moment.
Good job he had a helmet on. Look at the way that's been ripped to pieces. This is the drama at the back there. Cavendish was in an ideal position. There's some serious argy-bargy, and I don't know how, but Peter Sagan, Phil, was on the ground and he's back in the group.
Well, Sagan went round. He was right on Cavendish's wheel, so I'm not too sure how on earth he didn't get involved in the crash. But we're looking at 1.7 kilometres to go. The only good news for the riders, it was inside the 3 kilometre rule, so they all get the same time, those riders, when they do come in, but I don't think they're really worried about that right now. We need to get down there now. Still, Alessandro Petacchi is down there at the moment, And Matthew Goss is still down there as far as we can see. It looks as though Tom Velas is still there for the Shimano boys in white as well.
Yeah, but Phil, there are still 4 riders from Lotto Belisol now. This is their lead out. The 4th man in that line now is Andre Greipel. In front of him, it's the Kiwi Greg Henderson. He said the other day, oh, we were so close, and he's today going to try and make sure he delivers his man into the ideal position. Cavendish has got to get himself to the finish. A bit of chaos at the back end, but this is the bridge now. They've got a headwind. They will turn left off this bridge, and they will face up to 900 metres to go. This is all control now for this team. Lotto Belisol still in 4th position, but locked onto his wheel is Alessandro Petacchi.
They swing into the home straight now. In the distance is the finishing line. Andre Greipel is 4th wheel, but Alessandro Petacchi is 5th wheel, and then Peter Sagan is in there as well, and Goss is moving up. There's a split in the peloton, and the final lead out now. This is Adam Hansen trying to lead out. The last man to go will be Andre Greipel. He may have his hands full here with Petacchi, and moving up as well is Boysenhagen is also behind Petacchi. This is a sprinter's delight, and Goss is waiting to make the move, and he's making his move now, Matthew Goss, as he runs up the outside. Can Greipel hold off Goss? Sagan is coming up over on the right. Greipel has won this. Petacchi can't go round him. Greipel, Petacchi on the line.
Well, thank you very much, Greg Henderson. That was a sprint for 200 metres to go for Greg Henderson. He pulled off and let Andre Greipel get the victory. That was a well-timed acceleration. How happy are these men?
There is Henderson saluting there. I think the rider behind there was Tom Velas in the white jersey. Result for him, but this is a sad sight. You know, that was still out on the highway is that the World Championship jersey, Paul, but Greipel is the man. He's got the victory today. He may be totally unaware that Cavendish has crashed, but he must have wondered where he was in the sprint in that case.
Well, let's just have a look. This is how you take a textbook sprint to the line. Now you can see that's Greg Henderson. He will be sprinting his heart out there to try and look as far as he can, to try and take his man as close as he can to the finish. And now all of a sudden he launches Andre Greipel in an ideal position. If this had been 10 years ago, the man in the pink jersey there, Alessandro Petacchi, would have come whipping by Andre Greipel, but no, he's getting a little bit long in the tooth to have that last top-end acceleration. He still challenges, but Greipel was all the way to the line there, and that was a great move by Greg Henderson, I have to say, and the whole team, Lotto Belisol. Poor old Mark Cavendish, though, he's not going to be a happy camper this afternoon, because that could very easily have been another victory for him.
And thank heavens he's not injured with the Olympics coming up as well. Peloton coming in, they sat up, were delayed by the crash. If they were delayed by the crash, they would all be given at the same time. But Tom Velas did snatch the 3rd place there, and Matthew Goss 4th, and in 5th place was Peter Sagan. Goss left it too late there to make that run, and Greipel made it look rather easy in the end.
Yeah, well, we'll find out the stories of how that crash actually happened there. And at one stage, it looked as if a couple of the riders were going to get themselves around the danger.
And the yellow jersey coming in all smiles.
Yeah, well, he was in the group. He was just at that point where the crash, it was just about in front of him, so he's delayed by that crash. So he will also be given the same time as the group he was with at the time, and he will be with the leaders, and he knows that. He knows the rules, so he's going straight to the podium to get himself another yellow jersey.
Yes, they'll get the same time because the crash, as Paul says, a 3-kilometre rule is applied. By the way, if a teammate who isn't involved in the crash turns round and goes back to help an injured teammate, he actually loses time. The rule doesn't apply to those riders, only applies to those delayed by the actual crash. Look at this now.
That's Greg Henderson. He's a pretty happy man. That was a very impressive sprint that he did. There he is, got his hands in the air. He enjoyed that, and he's the man he was the last man to set it up.
Terrific, and that's, by the way, is Andre Greipel's 15th win of the year. He's keeping pace with Peter Sagan for sure. Here's the arrival of Mark Cavendish. He's in the straight now, as we can see, as we look around the area of the earlier in the finish. Great finish for a sprinter too, wasn't it?
Ideal sprinter, ideal finish, and there's I tell you what, if you have a look at Mark Cavendish's helmet, it really got smashed to pieces there. Confirmation then, Greipel ahead of Petacchi, Velas, Goss, Sagan, Jonathan Cantwell up there in 6th place, and Daryl Impey of Orica Green Edge in 7th place. Not a bad ride by him.
A very, very good ride by the South African. 2 South Africans in the race, and Robbie Hunt has had more than his fair share of 4s just now. Mark Cavendish continues along the key as he heads up. No change in the overall, at least it's provisional, but I'm quite sure there'll be no change in the overall. They will all be given their time gaps as was at the start of the day.
Yep, poor old Mark Cavendish though, because as you can see, he's ripped up pretty badly. It doesn't look as if he's too injured. I think more than anything else, it will be his pride that will be injured. So he's probably going to come out a rather angry man tomorrow when it comes up. And this is the fact is, Phil, because he's having to sprint on his own. In the past, when he'd had a lead-out train on the former HTC squad, they will have lined it out and kept him nice and safe. But there he was having to get involved in the argy-bargy in the middle of the pack.
Well, it was a very nasty high-speed fall as well, and that for those riders that did hit the deck, we're lucky we're not reporting somebody with serious injuries. They were flat out when that accident happened. The riders themselves will assess what happened, and they'll find out, because if riders are touching wheels and not paying attention, there'll be some discussions about that amongst themselves for sure.
Well, that's Daniel Oss as well. He's the lead-out man for Peter Sagan. He was also involved in that little accident there, and he's dragged himself up to the finish line. We'll find out a little bit later on what that was all about, because I'm sure somebody will be to blame for that little incident.
Winning ever since, so now he's got 15 to his credit. All right, let's have a look then at confirmation of the results. Long day in the saddle today for the riders, 5 hours 18 minutes for Greipel. Pataki getting his best finish so far. Tom Wieler's he's had a fourth, now he's had a third. Matthew Goss in fourth place, and Peter Sagan in fifth. Goss may have lost his best chance to win today in the absence of Mark Cavendish there. Sixth place, a newcomer to the Tour, but he is a very, very good sprinter, Jonathan Cantwell. He's from Queensland in Australia. He's got the sixth place finish today. Daryl Impey, another first time in the Tour, up for seventh. Edward Boysenhagen there crossing the line in ninth. Coming up, the Proform.com post-race report. We'll bring you the podium standings and any stories we can find out about what has happened. So it's time to join the live action now, and the peloton under the escort of Andre Greipel's team at Lotto. When he got the win yesterday, he's proving, Paul, to have the strong team for the sprinters. These are the leaders. They broke away right from the start today. Pablo Urtasun of Euskadel Euskati, Jan Gieselink of Cofidis, Julien Simon, Seo-Suzorn, and Mathieu Landagnu of France in the FDJ colours sat right on the front, second in line at the moment.
Yeah, they built up a maximum advantage at one stage of 5.5 minutes, but all of a sudden everybody's taking some serious note, and as you can see at the front end of the peloton, it's Team Lotto Belisson. It's a pretty flat stage, coming up in about 40 kilometres time, and we're going to have the sprint point of the day. We'll get a chance to see how is Mark Cavendish's hand. The most injured part of him is his hand, I suppose, and his pride as well, Phil, because he was not too happy to go down in an accident like that.
Well, we're going to find out as the day warms up, of course. His team are watching with equal enthusiasm as we are to see how he gets through this day. The best man in the breakaway, and this is why there's no big reaction yet from the leaders, is Mathieu Landagnu. He is 8 minutes and 4 seconds behind. He's number 144 in the white when we pick him up for you. And he is the best placed man on the escape. And I must say there's no reason to chase these four riders, Paul. I think the weather, where they're heading into the rain, will do the damage for the peloton today.
And let's hope it's not too damp running into town, because although the run-in is fairly safe, there's a very nasty 90-degree bend at the 1 kilometre to go line. And the difficult thing about this finish, Phil, as well, is it climbs up almost to the finishing line here, just outside the commentary position, but you can't actually see the finishing banner until about 300 metres to go, because it's a long, sweeping left-hand bend.
So there's the nice wide boulevards here. We're racing to Saint-Quentin, which was recently voted in the French newspaper L'Équipe as the biggest sporting city in France. Well, they're getting the Tour de France today. And the other thing that's remarkable about the finishing line in the Tour de France is that Paul Schoen once won on the same finishing line, but it wasn't in the Tour de France, right?
No, that was a long time ago, Phil. You've obviously got a very good memory. It was the 4 days of Dunkirk.
The 4 days of Dunkirk, which is a great race in this region, and isn't in fact 4 days at all. It's 6, but that's another story. Looking down at the peloton, it's hard to believe, but we drove down here yesterday evening, and we were passing through tremendous storms, and then next minute we're on beautifully dry roads. But I'm sorry to tell you that at the moment the umbrellas are up and have been for over an hour now at the finishing line. This is not a passing shower.
Well, every mile passed in dry weather for the main field they will be happy about, but this is what's awaiting them at the finish line. As you can see, there's a very good collection there of umbrellas. 74 degrees Fahrenheit, a very big chance of rain.
Yeah, but the weather, the temperatures are actually very good for the time of the year, but there are going to be a wet degrees today, I'm afraid. This is Mathieu Ladagnou it's his third Tour de France. He's the most experienced rider in the breakaway. And he sits nearest overall as well. He's doing 22% of the work, so he's got a wise head on his shoulders. He knows he's got quite a big lead over the peloton.
Interesting story about Ladagnou. In fact, he almost won a stage of the Tour de France a little while back. If you remember, we were talking the other day about how Fabian Cancellara won a stage, outfoxed all of the sprinters on the road into Compiègne. Well, there was a 4-man breakaway away at that time when Cancellara made that move, and in that breakaway it was Ladagnou, and he held on to finish 11th on that stage. He was so close to actually winning.
July 25th on the NBC Sports Network, leading up to the opening ceremonies, July 27th on NBC. Still lovely dry roads for the peloton of the Tour de France, and they might just get away with it because the weather's easing at the finishing line as well. Massive peloton. The latest gap we've got on the 4 leaders who've been away since the 0 kilometre is 4 minutes and 51. The peloton in France, Paul, lovely sight.
Well, different team coming to the front to give some help and assistance to Team Radio Shack Nissan. It's Orica Green Edge, the brand new all-Australian squad who are looking to try and get themselves a victory with Matthew Goss. They've tried on a number of occasions. Matthew Goss has always been in the mix. One day he will get it right, because the way to be a sprinter is you've got to go every day, and even if you're not the fastest sprinter in the world, and you might be a guy like Mark Cavendish, but even Mark Cavendish can make mistakes, as he did yesterday, and it gives somebody else the opportunity to sprint, which is why today Stuart O'Grady is the man on the front doing his turn at setting the pace.
So as the peloton moves on, you mentioned it, Paul, that crash yesterday came just within a mile to go to the finishing line. Take a look at this. The riders start to rickshaw. That was the South African champion Robbie Hunter bouncing off the road. A really difficult crash, this one. Of course, the big injury came to Mark Cavendish.
Right in the middle there, poor old Robbie Hunter rolled over like a rugby player when he tried to get himself back onto his feet. But you can see Bernie Eisel just in the top there. When he went to the team bus afterwards, he posted this photograph on Twitter. That was just before the organisational doctor put 5 stitches into his eye. Thumbs up. He's a tough character.
Indeed, indeed. Let's see how he is, because before the start this morning, Craig Hummer talks with Bernie Eisel.
Bernie, as best you can, describe what went down yesterday in the crash, because of course we can see part of the aftermath on your eyebrow.
I went down and it seems like I went down first, and so just have a big cut over my right eye, as you can see, and ASO doctors did a good job, stitched me together right away after the finish, and I don't have really pain there. It's just bruises everywhere. My ribs a bit hurting, my shoulder. But yeah, everything, I was pretty lucky. Even Calf has a sore hand, but he's okay. And I think even all the other guys, I'm sorry for them. And but it seems like they all just lost skin. And yeah, we can go on and do it again. Not crashing, but sprinting.
Well, as the saying goes, the show does go on today, another sprint stage. Is it harder for you now that you're banged up a little bit to get excited at the start, or do you work yourself into the stage?
I have to work myself into the stage. I really hope there's a group goes straight away and I have a couple hours to relax and get my body used to the bike again. And now, but yeah, at the same time, it's like yesterday, I was like, oh, I'm so sick of that. When you wake up in the morning and it's like, hey, it's your job, go out there, do it again.
As a professional, you're working off of reaction more often than not, but 24 hours after something like this happens, is there some hesitancy that works into your mind?
No, not at all. I mean, it's like it's another day, and everything, the race probably unfolds completely different, and we saw a really strong Lotto team yesterday, and I think yesterday was just bad circumstances, let's call it like that, and it's just, and I was caught up in between riders, like bouncing left, right, and I just lost it. And yeah, let's hope this will not happen today. And that's what was my speciality last year. I'm here to keep Calf safe and out of trouble, and I will stick to that plan again.
Well done. Well, he's had his 2 hours just about now since the stage started, Paul, so he's going to know how he's feeling.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, as Bob Roll would say, he's definitely not made of ice cream and chocolate, is he? He's definitely a man to bounce back and will not give up. Tough bike riders.
And he's another top bike rider, the only Canadian in the race here, number 61, Ryder Hejdahl, who is on the Garmin Sharp. And He's the winner of the Giro d'Italia this year, and I think we're going to speak a lot of him when we get into the mountains. He's chatting there with his teammate Tom Donaldson, number 62. He's riding with that separated shoulder, and he bounced onto the floor again yesterday, but that was not serious. And he's working on just how far he's going to ride at the moment in the Tour, I feel.
The difficult thing is, as he said to us a little earlier, Phil, it's just the way that he rides. The weight of his upper body is being helped, is being actually jarred going through the arm and up and through into that separated shoulder, making it very difficult for him. But he will want to try and continue in this bike race. It's so important for the team.
So, 2 Australians setting the pace at the moment. Stuart O'Grady for Orica on the front of that peloton, and in second place was Adam Hansen. He rides for the Lotto team and for Andre Greipel. They're the pace setters today. They're hunting these 4 riders. They'll leave them out for a while yet, I think, and then they're going to come out and take them. 22 years of age, Peter Sagan here, all smiles in the green jersey as leader of the points competition in his first Tour de France. He's won 15 races this year. More importantly, stages 1 and 3 in Serang and Boulogne here in the Tour de France. And you know, the finish today, it's not on a hill as steep as the 2 stages he's won, but it is a gentle climb, but it is a climb. He's beginning to settle in now. He's making friends with everyone. Yes, 2 wins so far. No third finger, Peter? No? Okay, he's not prophesying then, is he? This is the situation in the green jersey competition after yesterday. Peter Sagan leads, 147. Goss, solid 92. He hasn't won a stage yet. Greipel is 87. Cavendish and Boysenhagen. They're the top 5. There's 20 points up for grabs for the winner, down to 1 point for 15 today as they head down to the sprint. There we are now. And so as we gaze across the town again now, open countryside, it looks as though might be a little bit, it could even be raining at the sprint, and we're not that far away from it now, Paul, as we look at the Chateau de Foyville.
Yep, well, historians believe that this was actually built around 1478 to when Raoul de Lannoy married Jean II of Poix. At early writings on the chateau overlooking the valley presume that it's dated back to the 14th century, but nobody's quite sure.
A few kings came here, it says, like Louis XI in 1477, King Charles VIII in 1470 as well. King Francois popped in and paid a visit in the late 1400s. So they've all seen this place in the past. We're now looking for the riders who are getting themselves sorted out. It'll be interesting to see just how the bunch react now. They're still pulling it back. They won't get back before the sprint. Don't think there's enough kilometres left. But these boys, on seeing that board, Paul, know this is not their day.
What will also be interesting is to look at the time gap per now, and then once we start to get the wind up for the sprint in the main field, just watch how quickly that gap comes down towards those riders, because they'll shave off in 5 kilometres quite easily around about the 1 minute mark.
Gentle climb this too, although we're calling this a flat sprinter stage. I don't think there's a flat road on the route. It's not climbed, they're just gently rolling hills. The department of the Seine-Maritime and the Loise before we go down to finish in Saint-Quentin.
Ladagnu's the best placed rider in the group. Urtasun already aggressive, already in the breakaway in the early part of this tour. But Ladagnu has done the majority of the pacemaking in this leading group of 4. 51% of the pacemaking has been done by him, while the other riders, Ghislain, Urtasun, they've pretty much shared the pacemaking equally amongst themselves. Also, obviously an indication that Ladagnu feeling quite strong today. Ladagnu's in.
Ahead is the banner, 1 kilometre to the only sprint on course, as there is every day now in the Tour de France. The 4 leaders who broke away in the beginning kilometre are still here, and they will be in for the sprint. About 2:54 is the gap.
Well, the question is, who's the man feeling a little bit hungry, and who's the man who wants that extra couple of $1,000 to go into the team kitty at the end of 3 weeks of racing? I wouldn't be surprised to see the man in the orange jersey have a little dig. He's probably the least best of all the sprinters, but the way you can see just sitting at the back there, the rider from Soor in the white jersey with the blue shorts, and that of course is Simon. He's a prolific winner, and he may well and try and jump out of this group to get himself the first prize.
Still Ladagnu on the front there, 1:44, kicks out of the saddle. Whether they sprint, I don't know. He's got 500 metres to go. Urtasun in second place doesn't look too interested in getting out the armchair just now. And maybe Julian Simon also in his first tour won't do anything about it. I think they might just tempt not the sprint at all here, Paul, because they're not in the race, but there is a nice prize for the first man over the line.
Yeah, well, Ladagnou has done the majority of the pacemaking. I think they're giving him the respect for that, because he's the man, as we saw earlier, looking at the computer, has done probably 50% of the work in this breakaway. But at the end of the day, it's all about being a professional. It's all about taking money and making money towards the end of this race.
So they're not going to take the pleasure of the victory for him here. He goes across, 20 points in the bag. And look in the distance there, not that far back, are they now? They're out by that kilometre sign, I think. Now they will sprint. Totally different ball game there. And Ladagnou just pointing out a little obstacle in the road there.
Lots of communication between the riders, mainly hand signals. Occasionally they will shout or try and pass information amongst each other, because you don't want to go around a corner and find that there's a piece of nasty traffic furniture in the way. This is the main field. They're spread out across the road. They are, though, hammering along at a fairly good speed, approaching 30 miles an hour. There's a lead out on the right-hand side, and in fact that looks like the white jerseys of Argos Shimano.
And there's a lead out in the middle. Those lime green jerseys are looking for Peter Sagan to deliver him to the line. Well, Argos Shimano, boys in white, they lost today their sprinter who abandoned the race, Marcel Kittel, but they've found another replacement in Tom Wieler's, who's had a third and a fourth so far.
Well, that line through the
side, the last kilometre now, and it is FDJ on the front. The third rider in white is Hutrevich, the champion of Belarus. As we look down from the cameras, the centre lime green boys. The third man is Peter Sagan. Team Sky rushing on the outside. I think it's Eisel, followed by Boysenhagen, and then comes Mark Cavendish, and on his wheel is Alessandro Petacchi. They move across to join the line of Peter Sagan.
Well, that's Bernie Eisel on the front with the white jersey with the blue line down the middle. The man behind him, Boysenhagen, they're in the same team, but he's the champion of Norway. So Mark Cavendish is going to see how his hand and arm are feeling this afternoon as the acceleration starts. And Sagan's going from third position there. He's still got a teammate leading him out, but look at the challenge now starting to come on the left. That'll be Kenny Van Hummel.
Well, as Kenny Van Hummel has gone on the left, and in fact Sagan's waiting for Cavendish to make a move, and Goss is coming on the left as well. As a quick run for the line here, Boysenhagen is taking him on, and as they come through, that's Renshaw the late rush, and I think Cavendish took it in the end, followed by probably Goss and Mark Renshaw.
Almost a repeat of yesterday's sprint to the line there, the same three men going across in the same three places, and Sagan once again proving that he is a very fast sprinter, but not quite got the top end speed. I think for Sagan to be brilliant, he needs a slight incline to slow down the sprinters like Goss, Cavendish and Renshaw. But look how far back Renshaw comes from here. He's the man in the right-hand side in the orange jersey there, coming by full turbo, just gets third place. Goss will have to settle there for second.
And he'll have to work, how can he beat Mark Cavendish here? Ex-teammates, remember, as they come up towards the line. The good news for Matthew Goss on the right is he's nibbled a couple of more points into the deficit he's got on Peter Sagan, the leader on points, who won't lose his lead yet anyway.
It's quite funny though, Phil, because when you look at those riders, 1, 2, 3, they were all part of that magnificent HTC High Road team, which was dismantled at the end of last year, and riders going left and right to try and find their own chances.
Well, the crowd here enjoying the situation as all the sprinters did come out to play there. Again, no, Paul, we didn't see anything at Andre Greipel. Did the same yesterday and went on to win the stage. We're looking at the back of the race, a glimpse of the polka dot jersey of Michael Morkov. He is the leader in the King of the Mountains, and there are no mountains today, so he will be up to receive a clean jersey at the end of the day. The four go on. Just coming up to 3 hours of racing now. That was a beautifully clean sprint as well. The creme de la creme of the world of sprinters, and perfectly in order it was too. And Mark Cavendish giving himself a little test after falling yesterday, and he makes sprinting look so easy. Here he is, dead centre in the white. They all tried to get him, and as usual, none of them did. And let's have a look at our Road ID Challenge fan predictions. You're all going for Cavendish now. You're all getting used to this Tour de France, I think. Possibly, 46% of you say Cavendish is going to get the win. Sagan, it's uphill, remember, only 19%, and 5% for Matthew Goss as well. Don't forget, go on over to roadid.com/ride and make your predictions. There are big prizes at stake. And missing from that list is Tyler Ferrer, so we're going to find out, because Tyler's not quite clicked in this year with his big sprints yet, but I'm sure times will change for him. He was a winner in the Tour de France last year. Well, let's have a check-in with his Garmin Sharp team car. We've got a camera in there today, and let's see.
Yeah, well, that's just at 3 kilometres. It's a big boulevard coming in. It's the Rue de Paris, the road that they're coming from 5 kilometres to 3. And then at 3 kilometres to go, there's a sweeping right-hand bend into the Boulevard Victor Hugo, followed by 2 left-hand bends. And then you've got to be in the right place at the start. I would say you have to be in the right place at 1 kilometre to go.
Well, this looks like the Château de Tilleloy.
Yep, it is. It was built in 1645 for Maximilien de Belfourier. It has been improved dramatically over the years. Between 1751 and 1755, it was really modernised, although it was almost entirely destroyed again during World War I because of the battles that raged up and down here. But as you can see, in the early part of the 20th century, it was renovated after the war in 1918, and it retained its remarkable look as we can see it today.
Yeah, it really does look as though it's original, doesn't it? Terrific job of renovation. So as we gaze here at this beautiful chateau in northern France, the 3 leaders still looking at a lead approaching 2 minutes, which is not going to keep them out of trouble today as the race gets closer. Are clear in front of rather nice crowds again in northern France as the riders are racing today to a slightly uphill finish in Saint-Quentin. It could be a sprinter's delight, but because of the length of the wide boulevard, it's going to be difficult to judge, and we're still talking of a sprint finish, even though these riders have started to nudge it out again to 2 minutes 41.
Yeah, but Phil, I think this is pretty much, once again, like I like to say, it's the lull before the storm. They're just stealing a few more seconds before the main field really starts to kick in full power and have those big V8 engines with their turbos whistling to high speed.
Started to limit their gains, just doing enough to hold them and not catch them, but now they want to catch them. Now it's going to come down.
In fact, Alan Piper's just been caught up with by the official website of the Tour de France to ask him what he thinks about the guys in the breakaway. He reckons that the guys in the breakaway are actually playing with the peloton a little bit here. They're accelerating and decelerating the same as the main field are, trying to hold on to a little bit of an advantage so that they've got some energy left towards the end to maybe create the bit of a surprise.
Well, maybe they're sort of tricking the peloton into a false sense of security. Maybe they think they've got them, and maybe they haven't got them. Time will tell now. 31 kilometres, just on 20 miles from the finish. We'll be looking for the banners very shortly. Just checking those cleats there. Julien Simon at the back here. First time in the Tour de France, but the man in the breakaway has won 4 races this year. The others haven't won anything.
Well, good race.
Up towards 10 kilometres. In sight, the 10 kilometres banner. These 4 riders still survive. They've lost 45 seconds in 15 kilometres. That's all. And they're still hanging in there at 45 seconds ahead of the field. The field can see them because they're on a long straight approach to Saint-Quentin.
Well, I think the field now are just playing that waiting game where they know that the big acceleration that they can put in towards the end, either Team Sky on the left-hand side or Team BMC Racing on the right-hand side, if they really put the hammer down, they can add another 4 or 5 kilometres an hour onto their average speed.
Well, I look at the teams here. We've got Sky on the right for Cavendish, the Mauve jersey off for Alessandro Petacchi. We've also got the Omega Quick-Step team in there as well, breaking down the middle. And in fact, they've forced Greipel's team almost out of the front line. He's just about got his team in to the far right of our picture.
Well, just having a quick look there, the 43 seconds, I would say there is the gap almost exactly the same as the computer reads between the main peloton and these 4 leaders. They can see them, they can't quite get to them. They're going to have to put in a full-on chaser, one team or another, but that will happen, I reckon, once we get to the 5 kilometres to go, because then they will know they will still have strength in numbers in the final few kilometres. You don't want to burn out too soon.
180 kilometres, 89 kilometres they've been in the lead now in the race today. These are dangerous moments in the peloton, of course, as we look here at the Cofidis rider, Jan Gisselink. The peloton is Sky on the left now. Cavendish is in the white jersey in front of the other white jersey on the far left. The Mauves are leading out Alessandro Petacchi. I'm amazed at Cadel Evans, but he's made his team pace him and keep him safe on the right in the red.
Behind Cadel, Goss is down one of his top lead-out men. Don't forget Baden Cook, a winner of the green jersey competition at the Tour de France. Only the second Australian to do that after, of course, the great Robbie McEwen. Now Team Sky are taking a command on the front of the race on the left-hand side. Vive le Tour, long live the Tour de France, and I think I would subscribe to that.
Well, as they continue now, another little rise here. Team Sky checking out who's coming up. Johan van Summeren in the blue is driving now because Tyler Farah is getting into the picture. He's in third place behind that rider in the blue. Farah is feeling good. The sprinter, who hasn't had a win this year, is suddenly in the situation. 31 seconds is the gap now as we start to tick off the remaining kilometres. It is now 5 kilometres to go to the finish. The gap, 29 seconds.
They've got 2 long kilometres of wide boulevards, the Boulevard de Paris, before they swing into the Boulevard Victor Hugo, and then it will start to get grippy. Now it's Team Katusha in the red and white starting to take up the pacemaking. They've got 2 jobs at hand this afternoon. Look after Denny Menchoff, who is in 6th place overall, but also try and set it up for Oscar Freire, who also is suited to today's kind of finish.
The onion comes back together again, round another traffic circle. They then search the riders' wheels. These are the 4 riders who have led from the first kilometre today. They're now inside the last 5, 192 kilometres in the lead. It's 25 seconds. There's still a chance. It's a slight one, but it's a chance.
They will have to have at least a 30-second advantage once they get to the final kilometre. It's inside of that now at 25 seconds and 4 kilometres left to go, 2.5 miles of racing. This should only take them 5 minutes to get to the finishing line.
Now, Alan Piper, I know, has told his team in the Little Race radios that they've got to be on the front going full bore at the 3 kilometre point. That is the tricky bend. After that, it's pretty easy going towards the line. Gentle
honour the world champion Mark Cavendish.
And Michael Rogers from Canberra on Team Sky is setting the pace here on the right and giving it his best shot here, trying to get to this 3 kilometre point and the corner. As their 4 leaders are just about there at the moment, they're still clear. 20 seconds, and there's a crash in the peloton we can hear. There it is, as riders have touched wheel, and 1 or 2 riders have gone down there. Now let's see what that looks like. There is a rider down there from Garmin Sharp, Paul, if you can see it again here.
Well, I'm not sure how this happened. There's a lot of touching of shoulders going down there. Somebody's trying to fight to go through the wheel. It was a guy, it looks like it may well have been Tyler Farah, but it was the guys from Argus Shimano who were touching shoulders there. This is a very touchy situation here. You can only make one little mistake, but all these guys were thinking about that 3 kilometres to go, Bannerfield, and they were taking serious risks. Now it's Sky in control.
Now Sky are back in control. It was Tyler Farah. Robbie Hunter has stopped with him, and we go back up to the race here. 17 seconds is the gap. And I think Peter Sagan was possibly a faller there as well. I saw him off to the right, so there's no points for Sagan in 2 kilometres to go.
Don't forget, 45 points are available in the green jersey points competition on the finishing line. This is the first, a sweeping bend to the left. They will catch the leaders, don't you worry about that. There's a left-hander followed by another left-hander. The gap is 15 seconds. That is only 250 metres, the difference between the 2 groups.
Well, the movement has been disturbed, and again the crashes at the front. These are the 4 leaders. They're now on the edge of the canal here in Saint-Quentin. Once they're along the canal, they'll head up towards the finishing line. There's a left turn to come. Are they beginning to believe they can do it? Because the gap officially is just 10 seconds and coming down. There is the peloton now.
Well, there on the front, that is Edvald Boasson-Hagen. In second position is Mark Cavendish. Behind him, it's going to be the rider from Team Argos, and that will be Tom Wieler's in third place. There's the move now. This is coming from the Belgian rider on Cofidis, Jan Hesselink.
And Hesselink has made the corner. It's all uphill to the finishing line now. This is the Boulevard Gambetta as they make the run. And 1 more left turn to come as they hit it. Now there's 3 riders. Hesselink has made desperate moves here. 1 kilometre to go. The finish is at the top of the boulevard, and this is a real show defined by Jan Hesselink. can he stay away for the entire race?
Clever move by the Belgian rider. He knew they were boring down upon him. He's not got very much more than 5 or 6 seconds advantage. It's all going to go down to the crunch. It's all going to be very, very close indeed. The Belgian rider got the jump, trying to come across his Ladagnou. They're all over the place, but it's a long, interminable climb, this. It's going to come down to the final few meters.
Well, Hesselink, is he going to make it to the finishing line? They are trying to get on terms with him. The breakaway is still clear too, as Greipel's team are trying to reorganize themselves and get up to these riders now. Desperate moments as they climb up, and still no signs of Mark Cavendish getting out of that pack. These are the 3 riders hanging on, and the finish is 150 meters off this bend. They've got past it. Urtasun is he going to go wire to wire? Ladagnou is trying to get on terms. This is the win of a lifetime. Pablo Urtasun is coming up to the line. He's about 100 meters, but he's got to go. He at the right of Matt Goss is taking over. This is Matt Goss who pushes his way to the line, and Cavendish is out of this now as he's challenged by Greipel. Greipel kicks again. Cavendish, Greipel, Goss, and they were the order over the line. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, they nearly made it.
Well, it was almost a shock win for the breakaway this afternoon, but I tell you what, Andre Greipel is proving he's got the power here this afternoon, and he really came out of that. He dug very deep. That makes it 2 wins in 2 for Andre Greipel, and he will bolt up the overall standings in the green jersey points classification tonight.
Well, what a finish to the stage of the Tour de France today. The breakaway came within 100 meters of winning. In the centre point there, the green jersey of Peter Sagan. He finishes the day. He was involved in that crash, I'm afraid, as we saw that crash take out Tyler Farrar today. Farrar was the first one to crash.
Well, there you can see JJ Haedo over on the left-hand side from Argentina, and Team Saxo Bank getting a very fine 3rd place. Matti Goss was in the right time, but nobody had the legs to challenge the big man from Germany, Andre Greipel.
No, he can't believe the way the world has changed now, and this one is the one he will treasure, because he's beaten Mark Cavendish at his best when he had a team to help him, and he still won on the line.
Well, he is very happy about that one, and he will be very close now to the back wheel of Peter Sagan when it comes to the green jersey points competition. These sprints are so very, very dangerous. Guys are taking crazy risks just to try and move up a place or 2 on the run in towards the finish. Peter Sagan has learned a little lesson today about the Tour de France. She can be very, very mean indeed, having been so kind over the first few days.
But again, you know, I feel it was a rider error that caused the crash, as it was yesterday. They shouldn't be happening. Touches of wheels, excitement, closing of the bunch. There was nothing wrong with the approach to the line as far as the roads were concerned.
No, but at least Mark Cavendish could say thank you to his team for putting him into the right place at the right time. And of course, for Bradley Wiggins, he was kept safe.
Indeed he was. Perhaps we can have another look at that crash as we go back down the road. There's Tyler Farrar, and you see the riders at the white jerseys are the Argus Shimano riders. Now let's see if we can roll video. Keep your eye on the bottom of our picture. A little bit of a shoulder punch there, and wow, he really went down hard there. He really did. Unsettled quite a few riders, and Peter Sagan, as one rider also rode away into the side of the road there too, but they've been left down on the crash scene. We presume that they're up and riding. We don't know, as we're now looking here at the scenes at the finish here, where it's all happened again for Andre Greipel. 2 days out of 2, and saying thanks to everyone. This is how it almost happened. I really thought that Pablo Urtasun had pulled off the ride of the Tour de France in recent years, and then came a surge from Matthew Goss straight over the top of him as the line approached. That looked like the winning move, and then came the dash by Andre Greipel, and he gets up to Gossi right on the line and hangs on to that win. Second will be Goss, third will be JJ Haedo by the look of it, and they might give Mark Cavendish fourth there, as the hill beat him coming up towards the finish. Andre Greipel gets the victory, his second in this year's Tour de France, and without doubt one he'll treasure. It's his third in history, and poor old Matthew Goss on the right keeps on trying and falls just a little bit short again. He's had a third, fourth and a second so far in the sprints. Tom Veal is in there again too for the Argos Shimano team. He is sprinting extremely well. So vive le Tour. That's special, especially for those people who can afford to buy a helicopter, because nobody else will see that down there. Let's see if we can show you now the stage results. Oh, wait a minute, there's that little crash there. Tyler leaning on one of the riders from the Argos team, and that rider gave nothing, and Tyler went down as the riders struggle there to hold their position. And that's Vincenzo Nibali, I think, who's skidding into the pile-up. Oh no, it's not. His numbers become clear. It's Ivan Basso who's gone down there on the right in that turquoise jersey. That's a nasty fall for him. Incredible result for Andre Greipel today, and one he'll cherish, I think. Poor old Pablo Ortizon must have thought it was his today. Well, as always, coming up will be the Proform.com post-race report. We'll bring you all the podium standings, any interviews we can get, and updates on whatever happens in the next few minutes in the Tour de France. So, the second stage win for him. And this one will go down. He's actually just said it's the hardest stage he's ever won in his life.